Malo Lele, and welcome everyone to another episode of the Polynesian Eyes podcast. We have a live digital kava session here. Like to welcome Mr. Aotearoa and Maka from Salt Lake. How's it going, guys?
Yeah, good, Malo.
Doing very well, Tua. Always good to be here.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're excited. We're excited to have Maka join us, a regular here on the show. We appreciate his time. He is a busy dad nowadays. Exciting times. New addition to the family.
Yes, sir.
Nice.
So yeah, that must be pretty exciting on your neck of the woods then, Maka, huh?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, trying to get used to the adjusted sleep, you know.
Oh snap. No, 100%. Like it's crazy. It's like when a little kid sleeps in the bed yet takes up the most amount of space. The littlest thing now takes the most amount of time in the family. But like you said, it's all good things. Sweet. Well, we'll jump right into it because I think we're going to cover a lot of ground, a lot of different areas, depending on how comments come online and how the discussion goes. I was mentioning to Masi and Maka, this might go a little political, might go a little historical. We may go a little
all around
current events. It's going to be all over the place, but I think it's a really important topic because it's a lot that's going on, not only in our historical conversations on the Tui Tonga, the Tui Manua, and then just the Polynesian Empire, but also a lot on current events and what people are talking about. And it really is, what's the role of government, right? What's government's role in our lives? You can't get away from it, right? It's not like, well, I guess you could go live up in the woods in the middle of nowhere, but at some point, off the grid. But at some point, you're gonna have to engage with government. That's just the nature of it. And going to the extent that let's maybe do this. Let's start off with a reaction to a video of how crazy it is, right? Like, this is going all over the place where you are having athletes, you are having, movie stars, everyone's talking about what's the role of government. You even got our good buddy here, Conor McGregor, is stepping to the plate, and he's talking about government because everyone just has something to say and some impact in their lives. So let's start with this video and then open it up for a discussion.
To have with us on St. Patrick's Day. We're both wearing our green. This was not planned, but very festive. And as you know, I'll be having a briefing later at 1:00. So we'll talk more about their meeting later. But he's going over to meet with some other administration officials. He's spending the day in Washington, D.C.
For sure.
So
I'm here to raise the issues the people of Ireland face. And it'll be music to the people of Ireland's ears, because never on the main stage has the issues the people of Ireland face been spoke. Our government has long since abandoned the voices of the people of Ireland. And it's high time that America is made aware of what is going on in Ireland. What is going on in Ireland is a travesty. Our government is the government of zero action with zero accountability. Our money is being spent on overseas issues that has nothing to do with the Irish people. The illegal immigration racket is running ravage on the country. There are rural towns in Ireland that have been overrun in one swoop, that have become a minority in one swoop. So issues need to be addressed. And the 40 million Irish Americans, as I said, need to hear this, because if not, there will be no place to come home and visit. Ireland is at the cusp of, potentially losing its Irishness. And I'm here to raise the issue and highlight it. It's also St. Patrick's Day, so a little bit of celebrations for sure. And, a little bit of learning and listening to Mr. President Trump, whose work ethic is inspiring. And all that does to me is highlight the lack of work on my side. So that's it. That's what I'm here for.
Awesome. Thank you, Conor.
Any thoughts, guys?
Go ahead, Maka. I know Masi ready to say something, man.
Because I was just thinking, man, like when he says like losing its Irishness, I'm always thinking, and you know how he says he mentions the importance of the Irish Americans who live in America and the importance for them to come home. That's almost the same situations in Tonga, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's many Tongans in Australia, America, even here in New Zealand and different parts of the world the reason why they come to Tonga is almost like because Tonga is Tonga, right? If
Yep.
Tonga got some massive changes with immigration, right? It's and the government, let's just say, allows it to happen, and let's just say somebody in Tonga didn't sound the alarm to other Tongans. They're like, hey, you guys maybe need to pay attention to what's going on in Tonga if you still want to see Tonga still be called, like your home away from home kind of thing.
Mhm.
So looks like he's sounding that alarm with Ireland because Ireland is a different, unique culture compared to the English and the other parts of Europe. So Conor McGregor, as a proud Irishman, just sounding the alarm. It seems to me it's not just an Ireland problem. It seems to be a whole UK Europe problem with this mass migration, and and I think what they're saying is there's no vetting process to at least get like skills to really help your economy kind of thing, but it's like a mass open gate because I'm for immigration and migration and stuff, but it's different, right? When you live in America and Australia and New Zealand, you're a little bit tolerant, but let's just say if Tonga was to do something like Tonga can use a lot of labor force. They can get more Indians, get more Chinese, and let the floodgates open because they can say in the name of the economics to build a country, they'll do that. But then you'll lose something else. And I think that will hit different to all Tongans, no matter how many generations you are growing up in America or other parts of the world. It will hit different. Then you pay attention. But just this is just a good. I think like what you said, good a learning time. Even though it was St. Patrick's Day, it's a good learning time for the Irish, also for all, especially ethnic people from their homeland. It's to always keep an ear to make sure everything in Tonga is running properly, and maybe do something to help back in Tonga to keep Tonga what you remember when you were a kid or when you visited Tonga. So that's just me. That was my instant uh, thoughts on that thing.
What's your thoughts, Maka?
No, good thoughts. No, I was just thinking when the whole time he was talking, I was just like, man, I know for any Irish person seeing that, they're gonna tune in. But I know for like the average American, they're probably gonna, if it wasn't for Conor McGregor, they probably wouldn't really care. You know what I mean? Because they probably might not know what's going on in Ireland. They might not care. I'm sure for the avid person that's into politics, but for like the average person who kind of would just, it'll pop on their feed, they might tune in or whatever. Like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't know what was really going on with Ireland, whatever. Not really paying attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People like me. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not into politics as much as I need to be. You know what I'm saying? I know I've said that numerous times, but the fact that it was Conor McGregor, I know people's gonna just stay there and just watch anyway, just because, you know what I mean. All the time he's put in the UFC and all that kind of stuff. But I was just gonna ask, since you guys know, you guys might know a little more. When he's referring to Ireland, he's talking about, because isn't it two separate? There's like Ireland, Northern Ireland. It's like two separate
Country.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when he's saying Ireland, he's talking about
The Republic.
Because there's one part that's part of the UK, right?
Northern
Correct.
Ireland is part
That's
of
Northern
the UK.
Ireland. Okay.
Yeah.
So when he's talking about Ireland, he's not talking about that part, right? Because that's part
No.
of the okay. Got you.
I mean, they claim that should belong to them, right? Like, what is it? The Orange men that are up north, the Protestants, and then the Irish are more Catholic.
Yeah.
So there used to be like some issues there, some real tension, right? Like actually shooting and killing each other back in the
Civil
day.
War type stuff.
Yes. But yeah, he's for all intents and purposes the independent nation of Ireland is what he's kind of referring to.
Okay.
Because the UK, which is part of Northern Ireland, they did the Brexit, right? Like they left the European Union. And so they're somewhat already a little bit separated from it, but Ireland is still part of the EU, and the EU right now is, especially led by the Germans, was open door policy. Whoever and whatever comes in,
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, Tua?
Yeah, I'm gonna touch on a couple of these comments before we get too far. So we have Brown Monk says, "Yo,
Hey,
Malo,
Brown Monk.
Brown Monk, what up?
welcome. T Style is back. Let's go, Malo,
Hey,
gentlemen."
what's up?
Hey. T Style says he's following right now, so perfect timing for the
Nice.
live digital conversation.
Maria.
I get that.
Yes. T Style says, "Brah, Connor on politics. That's like us asking David Tua for his thoughts on Uncle Elon's spaceships landing." Hey, no, but that's what we're saying though, is like people are starting to get those questions, right? Like it's getting to the point, like you're saying, is everyone is having something to add to the table, because I think a big part of it is people are sitting back and watching what Donald Trump and Uncle Elon and these guys are doing.
Yeah.
And they're saying, dude, what we should be doing, what's going on over here, right? Like I just saw like the conservative leader of the UK. He's like, I'm sitting here observing Donald Trump and the Americans, and he's saying, you know what? We have been too laid back. We have been sitting back. We need to make England great again, right? Great Britain great again. We need to crack down on illegal immigration. We need to do all these things to take care of our people, right? And this comes back to kind of like our overall theme for today. What is the purpose of the government, right? And when we say government, I think so everyone understands, yes, we're talking about the federal government, state government in that sense, but we're also talking about the church, right? Whatever church you go to, what's the role and function of the church? Because really a government is just anything that's kind of formalized that you delegate certain powers to, because that's what a government is. What a government is as citizens or participants of that organization, we give it certain powers.
Yeah.
Right? Like the federal government.
Representation. It's sort of power to represent you, that they're acting on your behalf.
Exactly. Kind of. And that you're willing to submit or concede certain decisions or power to, right? Just like whatever church you go to, you concede that there are certain decisions the church will make that you are choosing to subject yourself to. No different than a kalapu. A kalapu is a form of government, right? Like to come and be a member of the kalapu, what is it? Is it financial contribution? Is it personal behavior? Is it attire? You know, there are certain things that you concede, right, as part of a team.
And they got a president.
Exactly. You have a president, you have a secretary, you may have a contribution of funds to execute things. So I want to make sure that, you know, as everyone's listening and adding your comments, we're really talking on the role of government in a very broad sense. We're going to go in between, you know, formal governments as countries. We're going to talk maybe around religion and churches. What's the role of the church, even the family, right? We were just talking before we jumped online. Husband and wife, two-party system, two different interests, right? The husband's interests and the wife's interests. You have to navigate those two, right? And work towards a common goal. And what are the children, the population, you know, because the decisions mom and dad make have an impact on the children. And just like families, independent marriages, their decisions on foreign and domestic policy have impact on siblings, families who act as like other countries, right? Where if you're like if you want to be like Donald Trump in your family, you're going to tariff everything your siblings do. Maybe your siblings are going to ita and retaliate with their own tariffs, you know, and those reactions. But it's really just looking at government and organizations in our lives and what's the purpose of it. And I think we're getting to a point that government and organizations are just, it's creeping into every aspect of our lives. Even businesses are turning into quote unquote mini governments. There are certain companies that are larger than whole countries. Yeah. Right. So that's kind of the theme here. Let's see.
Got some comments coming?
Yes. I don't want to get too far from it, but Paulie Prince, welcome. He says, Malok Altama about to take a shot of feel free and let's go get it to it. Yes, sir. Hey, Marie.
Nice.
Everybody's feeling mafana today. Everyone's feeling mafana today. Here's T Style says dualism versus modern take on functionalism. Man, that's a little too sophisticated for me, T Style.
Break it down.
Maybe
Break it down. T.
break it down. Give a little bit more of a breakdown on that. But that's maybe that's a PhD. I'm more like a class one level for me.
Man,
Here's T Style Federal Reserve. Any thoughts on the Federal Reserve? That's a big topic now. Like Uncle Donald, it sounds like he's even considered abolishing.
Dismantling that too.
The Federal Reserve, because it's not managed by the federal government, right? Like it's an independent organization, but it dictates what our interest rates are. So it's kind of an interesting thing is how, this is where all the conspiracies come from, right? Like, or is this was it Rothschild family? Are they the ones really running the world because they have all this wealth and so forth? But P-Style wants to see if we have any thoughts on the Federal Reserve.
Man.
For me too, I'm not too sure with is the Federal Reserves the ones that are in charge of the interest rates that you can do your mortgages and stuff from your homes and how much you can borrow on that kind of thing? Is that what they're in charge of?
Yes. So basically the banks borrow from the Federal Reserve, right?
Okay.
And the Federal Reserve will basically, a lot of times they will set the interest rates, and then the banks that you live in will base their interest rates off of that. So it's a very powerful, it's basically dictating the financial position that the banks in the US will take.
Okay. Yeah. For me, I don't know too much, to be honest, regarding T-Style's question. I don't know too much of the pros and cons, so I guess I'll just leave it to either Maka or you, Tua, to kind of break it down. But I'm not too familiar with the Federal Reserves, if it's a pro or con.
Any thoughts, Maka?
Hey, I'm about to be the student today. I'm over here just like, man, because I know Tua got the.
Oh, I don't know about that.
My problem was, like I said, I don't know if you remember, like, I don't expect you guys to remember, but if you can, in other episodes I've been in, the reason why I didn't really get into politics as far as like touching on everything, including the Federal Reserve, you know what I mean? A lot of that stuff, because remember, I coming in over from Tonga, I came in on a visa as a baby with my parents. I was in overstay, and then I didn't get my green card for like maybe 11 years ago or something like that, 12 years ago, just barely, you know what I mean? So because I grew up my whole life, especially in LA, I just watched the episode about who I talking about California is like the last place he'd ever go to, you know what I mean? But
I'm not brave enough.
But me, I wasn't aware of politics and stuff like that growing up in Cali because I was, what you would call an illegal immigrant, kind of, you know what I mean, in a sense, even though I was in overstay. But because I knew I couldn't vote, I knew that if I were going to college or something, I'd have to pay extra fee. Like, I didn't want nothing to do with it. So I never even looked into it. But now that I'm older, like I mentioned earlier, I should learn about this kind of stuff because it's going to affect, especially having a newborn. It's going to affect me, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm probably kind of a little more like Mussy. Like, I do know that the Federal Reserve does have something to do with like the president right now, technically himself directly doesn't have anything to do with interest rates and all that kind of stuff, which the Federal Reserve does, right? Who might be able to school us on that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't consider myself like a pro or anything on the Federal Reserve. It's just what a lot of people don't like about it is that there's no oversight by anyone who's voted on. Like even the president of the United States doesn't have control on what the Federal Reserve does. Doesn't that seem just odd?
That's crazy.
Right? Like so it just seems odd, and they're run by a bunch of private guys, right? And there's just a lot of weird stuff going on. Basically, for me, ever since the U.S. kind of went off of gold standard, using gold as you back your currency with gold, they just started printing money. It just felt like it gave a lot of power to a small handful of people, and whenever you do that, I'm not a big fan of it, right? Just the same thing like the federal government. I think the federal government has like a handful of responsibilities: foreign affairs, keeping the border, having a military, maybe having some federal roads. But once you achieve that, I'm pretty happy with a federal government. But now it gets into a bunch of other stuff. I don't like that, right? Like, just let's use the Department of Education. Masi's mentioning Donald Trump's about to dismantle that, right?
I think he did. He already signed
Yeah.
the executive order.
So before the Department of Education, America was doing great, leading the world in education, right? Then all of a sudden, the federal government decides we need a federal, because it used to be taken care of by the states. We need a federal organization to regulate it. Not only have we spent trillions of dollars, we've gotten worse with the trillions of dollars, right? I mean, it's just like the war on poverty. America creates that. So we're going to have a war on poverty. We spend trillions and trillions of dollars, and the gap between the rich and the poor get wider, right? And there comes a point where you're like, wait a second. Why is it every time we say we're going to have the federal government solve a problem and throw a lot of money at it, the problem gets worse? And you can do that on almost every agency. Federal Reserve is the same thing. Federal Reserve regulates, sets it up for all the interest rates for all the banks. You know what's happening? Small community banks are dying left and right. Many of the decisions that the Federal Reserve does, many times it causes for smaller banks to die and bigger banks to buy them up. Right? So I mean, I'm just, let me put it this way. I'm not an expert, but I'm always like, I'm always cautious. Like, what's your real reason? Right?
Okay.
Like, why are you trying to make things more on the federal level? And it's because you try to consolidate more power.
When was the Federal Reserve created?
That's a good question, Masi.
Because I'm thinking you're saying, Tua, when the Federal Reserve was created, we came off the gold standard of having gold to back our money, and it was just more on just interest rates, and just maybe we started to print a lot more money that was, that really kind of caused inflation, right? So that's what I'm
Been
thinking.
around for a while, I think.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. I don't know.
World War II or something like that, or
shortly after. Let's do this. Let's share this tab, and we have our good and AI, the newest and greatest grok.
Malo grok.
So the history: the Federal Reserve was established on December 23rd, 1913. So before World War I and II, when President Woodrow Wilson, and you guys know who Woodrow Wilson is, right? That's the guy who
he was a super like lefty, right?
Super lefty. He's the one who basically elevated the KKK to a more influential position. Okay, so he's. I mean, granted, people on the left will probably be like, "Tua, you're just picking." I'm a little biased. I'm much more of a conservative. Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act into law. Its creation was in response to a series of financial panics, particularly the Panic of 1907, which exposed the vulnerabilities of the U.S. banking system. Before the Fed, the U.S. lacked a centralized mechanism to manage currency and stabilize the economy. Early attempts at central banking, like the first and second banks of the United States, had failed due to political opposition and concerns over centralized power. Once again, right? Federal government is a necessary evil from my perspective, right? You have to have government, but it is a very dangerous thing to have. Any thoughts, or you want me to jump into?
No, I think I kind of get it now. So there were a lot. Is it because of, like, I don't know, the Great Depression or something that happened before, and there was coming back out of that just the instability, and they just thought it was much better to have certain people with a lot of money to watch the.
Yeah, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Obviously, experts, right? We've learned a lot about experts, in my opinion, in COVID, right? Like we need to put the experts in charge. But obviously there was even opposition to that, right? When to the Federal Reserve. So basically the purpose, monetary policy, it's supposed to facilitate financial stability and be the main payment system for the government. And obviously
Stability.
Doge has looked into some of those things and some of the payments that goes on, trillions of dollars to unknown locations. Let's get through some of the comments. They're starting to get away from me. Any thoughts before I get to the comments?
Nope, no thoughts.
Learned something new today.
Yeah.
So let me get this view here. So T-Style says Federal Reserve is an agent of the World Bank contracted with the USA, but has a tight grip around our neck. I wouldn't be surprised if that's has some truth to it. Paulie Prince, this is more towards you. Maka says, rest in peace, Got a Blue.
It's a little bro right there. Malo.
She, as always, Water Bears, never boring. Alphabet Mafia is going to lose the month of June.
Os con Water Bears.
She Water Bears. Hey, Mo just clocked in. Welcome, Mo. He says, what's up, Tonga kids?
What up, Mo?
Oh, yeah. Mo says it's getting even worse now. Hurry up, Trump, and stop taxing me on my overtime.
Man.
No tips. On tips and overtime, no tax.
Trump needs to work on that. Is he still trying to work on those things? Because I know that's one of his stuff that he was working on.
He didn't sign off on it yet?
No, they're working through a they got it because they have a bunch on the because on the tax it needs the Congress to sign off on it. Okay. So he's working through those, and he's going to have to do it. I mean, hopefully within the next 2 years, because you don't know if you're still going to have the House and the Senate after the midterms. Because if he loses the House or the Senate, then he won't be able to.
Stalemate.
Yeah, he won't be able to pull it off. But yeah, I mean, just kind of on your comments earlier, Maka. I think we were all like that, right? Like it's kind of like as you're going through life, politics is like, it's not important. I'm too busy being the cool guy on campus, hanging out, enjoying life, which I think is a natural progression. But that's why I wanted to define government as a very broad term in our discussion, because you know what, when you look at the root word of politics or polity, it means it's no different than social. It's interacting with people. That's what I'm saying is you can't avoid it. Yeah. Right? It's impossible. You can't say, like let's use an example. You can't say I don't care about politics or politics doesn't impact me when politics decides how you're taxed. Politics decides what your children get taught in school, right? Politics determines what kind of laws happen, right? So I think it's that as we mature and we get older, we start to realize, we can't just ignore politics, right? It's a really important part of our lives, and it's funny how Masi, you were talking earlier about Tonga. Some of the videos towards the end, we're going to talk about how some people are reacting. They had like some kind of summit going on in Tonga where they brought in the people to kind of give feedback and talk back to the government. Some interesting comments back, but
what's funny? Just a thought popped up growing up in LA. So like, what's funny is, I wouldn't what you would call like a certified gangbanger or anything, right? But as far at least I can't speak on other states or other cities or whatever, or even other parts of California, but the word politic is they use that term, and I'm not proclaiming to be a gang expert or nothing, right? but they call it politicking. You know, they politic with each other like the Bloods and
Yeah.
Crips. There's certain politics you got to follow. There's there's times there's certain times of ceasefires or called peace treaties and all kind of stuff, which is just funny because it's kind of like they're like anti-government at the same time they got the government, you know, kind of thing. You know what I mean? But I feel like you said there's government in every aspect, no matter on the street level, all the way up to the, you know what I mean? So
because those gangs are a form of government.
Yeah,
right. Like the gang is a form of government. It has its rituals of, and whether you call it government or religion, it has certain rituals, right? That's why I think if maybe I just sound crazy, but everything to me looks religious. Everything to me looks political. Everything looks like a family. Like these are all overlapping ideas. They're the same ideas presented in different ways. Like let's use the gang situation, right?
Yeah.
The gang situation has an initiation, typically, right? You have to show commitment. And how do you show that commitment? Either by doing a task, right? Or showing it over a period of time. And if you show that, then you're brought in, right? And when you're brought in, there's an expectation. You know, you don't just be brought in and then you fight Terija. No, you're brought in. There's certain rules. There's certain politicking, right? And when we say it's a ceasefire, you can't just go on and decide on your own, right? No, you have to consult with the rest of the government, the rest of the family.
Just like the government, there's consequences.
Exactly, right? Exactly, 100%. So really, I mean, it's the same thing with the family, right? You can go and do whatever you want, but there's consequences when you come home and dad has the 2x4 waiting, right? And so this is kind of a that's why I think it's a very important way for us to have this conversation, because it's about how you should interact and how you should view government organizations and your role in it, and to realize you can't escape it, right? It's like saying, it's like when I talk to an atheist and they say, I don't live by faith. I only live by facts. And I'm like, Sharna, it's impossible to escape living by faith. You don't know if you're going to get in the car, if you're going to die in the car, right? When you say you saw these facts, you have faith that the scientist who's telling you is not lying to you, right? Like by the simple fact that we don't have access to all the information, we live by faith. That's just the reality. And that's what I want to kind of really express to everyone as we're talking about this is you cannot escape politics. You cannot escape government. These are things that are a real big part of our lives. Let me see here. Water Bears says, I never gave a crap about the Obama era because I was young, dumb, and broke at the time. Now married with kids, paying taxes, and determining what my children get taught. 100%. Right? And I, 100%. And that's just normal, right? That's what we call progression in life. That just happens, right? I didn't care about a lot of those things like Water Bears is saying until all of a sudden, when you look at your paycheck and then you're like, Shanna, I worked X amount of hours. When you do the simple math, right? When you do the simple math, a certain rate for a certain amount of time equals a certain amount of dollars. And then when the check comes, it's way smaller. Yeah. So naturally you're like, oh yeah, well, money.
The Federal Reserve. Hey.
Exactly. The federal taxes that are coming out. That's why I'm in Texas. A big reason of why I'm in Texas, no income state tax.
Yeah.
Right. One of the reasons why, I was open to going to Las Vegas, because why? No income state. Exactly. Utah. I tried to move to Utah. I tried to make it work. I was like, house more expensive, income tax, I get paid less. And then I kept trying to look at it. Interest rates went up because of the Federal Reserve. This was like what, maybe a year ago, a year and a half ago.
Yeah, you were thinking about it.
I thought I pulled the trigger. I'm going to move to Utah. Right? Hey, we're going to do it. Interest rates. Federal Reserve kept raising the interest rates. Right. Cost of living. I was like, oh yeah, wait, enough for pay Texas. That's all we got.
Yeah. Everybody's waiting on that OT bill, man.
Yes, everybody's waiting for the tax on the OT.
Yeah.
let me see here. Any other thoughts, and we'll go to maybe another
Um,
thing.
I have a couple thoughts. Well, I have my first. I'm interested with what Maka's thoughts are on this, like with the whole immigration stuff, because I know, he was you just shared Maka, right? You overstayed, and then you were able to get
Oh yeah.
your green card and everything. And I'm
Everything immigration I had to deal with growing up. Like my siblings, they all born out here. They don't
They
know
were
about
fine.
having to go to downtown.
They don't have
5
to
in the
deal
morning,
with that.
standing in line around the block, taking 5 hours to get in the building for them to deny you. You know what I'm saying? They don't know about that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, go ahead,
Maka,
go
yeah,
ahead.
I want to hear because I want to hear your thoughts on this because I'm always me. I always taking the thoughts of like, hey, if you're overstay, hey, I'm fine with that. I'm not one of those people that call or whatever. Apparently, there's been things that been having people call whoever's to overstay them. No, right? Get them out. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. I don't subscribe to that thing. But I'm like, hey, if you're here, you're already here. But if you get caught, this is my thing.
Yeah.
If you get caught, then that's your own doing. You gotta just face the consequences on that. But that's just me on how I feel on that. I just think what's your thoughts with the whole, you know, we saw the 250 plus criminals, and of course when you try to focus on like people who are doing some hardcore crime, there's gonna be some collateral damage because obviously they've been here for a while, they're gonna have kids, all of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. The whole trickles down. And I just wanted to see what your thoughts are. If is what's going on, is it too extreme, or do you think, this is the law of the land, it's the president, this is how it goes? But I'm just saying, like for me, I'm just saying, hey, go do your thing. If you get caught, hey, you get caught. No, nothing personal. You face the consequences just like everybody else. Whatever they do with their choices, they face the consequences. It is what it is. That's just what I subscribe to. I just want to hear your thoughts just with, you've kind of lived it with being overstayed. Now that you have your green card and everything, just kind
Yeah.
of where the world is at right now. What's your thoughts on that?
Man, I mean, I need to hurry to do my citizenship. That's the first thing. But
Mm.
I mean, as far because for example, I got a lot of I got I don't want to say a lot, but I have some acquaintances, people I'm acquainted
Mm.
with, friends and
Mm.
stuff that have been deported. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I just, for some random reason, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, sometimes there's random stuff that'll just pop up and it'll pique an interest, and I'll watch the whole thing. But I'm watching these people getting locked up in prison for, there's something to do with it was like the different degrees in murder, for example, right? Like 3rd degree, 1st degree,
Yeah.
3rd degree, 2nd degree, 1st degree, the severity, 3rd degree or 1st degree being the most severe, and like the possibility of getting like life without parole, all that kind of stuff, versus you getting deported. I'm like, man, and this is probably just a random thought, maybe nothing to do with what you're asking, but like, I was like thinking, man, I'd rather get deported than get locked up for life without parole in prison, because
100%.
move out the thong and come live with me, we could be together. But whereas in prison, you just around a bunch of nothing but dudes, you're never gonna get out, and it's like, it's crazy. But I mean, I think the old saying is true. I mean, again, not to bring gangbanging in, but it's kind of like you do the crime, you know what you sign up for, you do the crime, and because I mean, like, for who in their right mind would think in any modern government that like you should expect consequences. You should expect consequences of what you do. You know what I mean? So you got to deal with all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? But like, as far as like, again, I'm not really knowing too familiar. I'm still kind of, like I said, I'm starting to kind of learn and look into immigration type stuff. But with what Trump, because like, what is Trump trying to do? He's trying to crack down on that, right? He's trying to
crack
be
down.
more severe as far as people doing crimes and stuff. You talking about he's trying to send people back to their countries?
Deporting people back that have no
with their
status
family,
here.
even if their kids were born here, right? Something like that, right? Or
is it something like that too, right? It's with their whole family, right?
Yes, if you came illegally, he says you are subject to it. Now, that's not his main focus right now. His main focus is criminals, right? Like that's where they're focusing right now. But what they have said is, but if you're here illegally and we come across you, you're subject to being removed. But their primary focus right now is MS-13, Tren de Agua. Those are the top two that they've and then also the cartels that they're starting to name as terrorist organizations, because that triggers more severity in their actions. But yeah, I mean, they're primarily focusing on the criminals, but they are saying, hey, if you're here illegally, you should be concerned, is what they're saying.
Okay, my bad. Not to drag it on a little longer, but I just
No, you're
remembered
good.
I just watched something on. It was on YouTube, but it was some series. I think I forgot the name of the channel, but it talked about, I don't know if it's the 13th or 14th amendment, something to do, and it showed a whole bunch of cases of like it. So I think it's called like Jus Soleil or Just Soleil or something like that. You know that law where I don't know if you want to pull it up, but it's like whoever's born in the U.S.
Yeah, birthright citizenship.
Birth, yeah. And I know there's been some that's been a topic of debate amongst Americans, like who's a citizen, who should be a citizen, citizen, all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So to go with what you're asking, I know it in that little mini documentary I watched, it went through from like it had something to do with the slaves, then it was like, oh, what about the Chinese people, or what about the other people, all that kind of stuff. Like, who is their children? Will their children count? Because there was a whole bunch of stuff to do with it. It was pretty good. I don't know if I could just pull it up right now, but I mean, as far as that goes, tying into what you're talking about, trying to target the criminals, right? Do you think it as possible to do as far as like to separate like the illegal criminals from just illegals who are doing what they're supposed to do? Like, you think that would be possible to regulate all that kind of stuff, or would that just be too much work? Or what y'all think, like, as far as like immigration goes? That's to me, that's where the question comes down to, because it's kind of like, I don't know if you should generalize it, like just get all immigrants out of here, versus I can see like, the criminals, like, I mean, who wants a criminal? Who would want a criminal in their neighborhood or country or city, right? You know what I'm saying? But if you're going to just lump them all in one category, just all illegal immigrants, that I think that's where the question comes down to. Like, is that
100%.
Is that able to be regulated as far as, because like, how many immigrants are there in the country?
Well, see, this is the funny thing, and I want to say funny, but this is how governments work, right? You know what determines this? Who the people vote for in power. There is no, I do want to say, there is no quote unquote moral, this is right and this is wrong. No, what it is what the majority of the people agree to, right? Like, for example, if you live in an HOA that says, exactly, you live in an HOA that says you can't park on the street. Parking on the street itself is not morally right or wrong, but if the HOA says you're not allowed to and you agree to it, then it's something that you shouldn't do. But it's not. So I want to say that there is no morally correct, right or wrong on how the citizenship should work. The reality is, this is however the government chooses to do it. Like, it's the, I think T-Style says it's the 14th Amendment. That's the whole thing. You can, that's why it's an amendment. It's a change. It's something that they added or took away. So I do want to kind of, before I answer that question, Maka, I say, this is not a question of what is morally right or wrong. This is how functionally it should work. For me, it's about prioritization. You can't do everything at once. So for me, I would say, you know what? I'm not too worried about a little kid who just got born here. What I'm worried about is, are you over here killing people, bringing in fentanyl? Are you robbing? Are you breaking? I'm more concerned with that. And if we were to get out all the criminal illegals, and then we say, hey, dude, we have a big problem with people going around vandalizing and burning stuff who are citizens, I would say, you know what? That's more important to me right now.
Yeah.
Right. It's a matter of priority. And I could go either way. I don't really have a preference for the birthright citizenship or not. I just pulled it up here, and it just discusses about, what you were saying, just solely, right? The right of soil. Just because, being born here, right?
That little thing I was watching, it wasn't talking about this in particular per se, but it was talking about how it even came about, because it had something to do with, like, remember the slaves when they're freed, it was like after the Civil War, 40 acres and a mule. Then something happened where something changed, all kind of like with the Federal Reserve. Something had to be regulated or something had to be put into the works to kind of like organize it or whatever a little more. And then this came about. But it was just like a lot more behind what these words are saying. But
yeah, I mean, and to me, it really doesn't matter what the decision is as long as everybody agrees to it. What I'm not a fan of is if the majority of the people say we disagree with it and the government just does it consistently over long periods of time, I would say that's a problem. Right? Like if America votes, we want to just continue doing that. So be it. Right? But I will say this. Right now, America overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump says, I'm representing the people, he might do it. And then if people disagree, go vote for someone who will turn that around. Vote for a senator, vote for a congressman, vote for a president that will change that for you. Any thoughts, Masi?
Yeah, no, two things like what Maka was breaking down with the ones who have done, criminal activity while being in the country illegally, and then just the ones who are just here illegally. I do know there's some trickle effects because I'm kind of like with Maka, the criminal ones, they're the first priority. But then they've actually done some studies, and it just depends which hat you're wearing. See, now that Maka's a green resident, Dua, you're a citizen, I'm a citizen, right? See, but this is they say this, and I've seen it here in New Zealand, when you allow a mass migration, they're here and they just say they overstay. But the people who just get by with the bread line, just with the work, so I'm just thinking economics. You get somebody who's an overstay and they just stay here longer, guess what? They're going to work a lot cheaper for that employer than what you are. So you're not going to get that raise that you wanted because the company just say, we can let you go. We'll get somebody who's working even half the money that what you are right now. So then even though they're here illegal, they haven't done any crime. They're just trying to get money to send back home, right? So they're willing, and let's just say their living conditions is a lot worse than yours, so they can handle the rough patch. So there's some trickle effect because once they do that, they're gonna affect your paycheck, what you're not probably getting, what you're just getting by to feed your family. And if you get a bunch of those illegals that are staying
flood the market,
the country, flood the market, you're never gonna get a raise. Two, that also jumps the rate for your kids if they want to say get a rental home or apartment because they're all going to be taken up. So
more competition.
It depends which hat, because there's a lot more competition. So that it's going to affect you, even though they're not doing any illegal activity per se of saying committing crimes and stuff, but they're here illegally. They're going to work cheaper, and that's going to withhold. And that's what they were saying. That's why a lot of the companies. Yes, they're gonna affect you economically, even though they're not doing the crime. So that's what I'm saying, and that's why Trump is actually just saying I think there has been a high amount of illegals here. They're just staying here illegally. That's affecting people's paychecks who work in the manufacturing, and that's the reason why a lot of the manufacturing jobs have left the U.S. so they can get the cheaper labor, somewhere else. But because they can always sell back to the U.S. But those are the little things that it has trickle down effects, because it affects the money, the paycheck you bring home, affects the rent that you or your kids want to get by because they're all taken up because there's no more left. So they got to build new ones that can cost a lot more, even housing. Yeah. So there's a lot of trickle down effects, even here in New Zealand, because there's been a problem with people illegal overstaying and stuff. There's not enough hospitals. So then you bring the quality of care down because you're treating a lot more people who are here, let's just say, not paying their fair share of their taxes, kind of thing. So there's a lot of trickle down. There's a lot of trickle down effects if it's not doing the crime necessary to your home, but the quality of life and the quality that you want to do for your future generation.
Yeah,
that can take effect. So that's
basically what you're saying. One way or another, it's going to affect.
Yes. Yes. And then, like Masi was saying, it's a priority, right? If you're going to come in and be a criminal and steal right off the bat, you go to the top of the priority, right?
Got you.
Granted, I agree. Everyone broke the law, but the one who does it the most, you're going to get
Yeah.
the attention first, right? And there's a couple things that I think that is important to really consider. I mean, here's the funny thing, Maka. While you were over here as an overstayer, I didn't realize this, Masi, until much later in my life. But you and I were overstayers in Tonga
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
because we were born in the U.S. We moved to Tonga, and we didn't get. I didn't get my citizenship until like the year I left Tonga.
Yeah.
How many years was that? How many?
I was 15 years old.
Oh, dang. So 15 years overstayed.
15 years overstay because you're only supposed to have like 30 days.
Yeah.
Right. And then you either get a long-term visa or you become a citizen. Right. Now, granted, it was easy because I literally just walked into the government, showed my dad's birth certificate and passport, and they issued me my birth certificate immediately.
Yeah.
And I became a Tongan. Now, it was easy. But here's the other thing to me, to help people from my perspective to understand it clearly, and we'll watch a video of this. Is why to think of government, you got to think of it as everything, right? Let's use the gang example. How from a gang perspective, how open would they to be anyone to just walk in, get involved in their gang activities, get involved in their drug? They're not going to just let whoever and whatever come in. They're going to say, no, you have to show that you're dedicated. You have to show that you're willing to be part of the quote unquote team, right? These are very logical ways to think. Same thing in a home. I'm not going to let whoever to come into my home and fight Derija, right?
No.
I may be a little more lenient to family, right? But if the family comes in and they start beating people up in the home, right? They start stealing. I'm just like, Shanna, you're going to have to go be successful somewhere else. Now, if they came in and they're overstaying, they're welcome, but they're being nice, right? They're still going to cost money to me, right? Because I still got to buy them food. I still got to do things. But you're a little more tolerant when it's like, hey, Tua, at least thank you.
Yeah.
I know I'm a burden, but mahalo, mahalo. I'm willing to be a little bit more patient. But when I see you running down the streets of America, burning the American flag, burning Elon Musk's cars and stuff, and causing a nuisance, I'm like, yeah, I think you need to get out of here, right? You know, and let's look at some of the comments real quick before we get too far. Hey, Blue Tufuli, welcome to the show. He says small government and even smaller taxes. That's how you vote. And that's kind of interesting. There's a video later on, Blue, that we're going to look at from the PBD podcast that kind of talks about that. And we'll get into it. This is a funny one. Masi, why don't you read out Water Bear's comment here?
All right. The girl who broke my heart was an overstayer. Hurt me pretty bad. Then I heard she got departed, and it made me feel better. Is that harsh? Deported, eh? Okay.
Hey, Water Bears, I want to know, is that a cow, or what kind of cow you got over there? Is that tofu? That's or it's just a Fiji blend.
I know who you cover it now.
Malo here. Here's another one from Water Bears. He says, illegal is illegal. Crossing illegally is a federal crime. Come in the right way. Wait in line. It ain't fair for those who are waiting in line and doing it the right way. I don't have any issues with that comment. Any thoughts on Water Bears?
I say, to be honest, since we're not even on the radar, we're 0%. Just give the polys a pass. Hey, we're 0% of the population. Yeah. We don't affect nothing.
Maria.
Everyone else, worry about it. I'm not gonna say who, but
yeah, well, see, and that's what I can't argue with that. Maka, that's pretty funny. You know, if we're talking about impact, But but here's the thing that I also think is interesting with what Wada Bears is saying is, if you aren't willing to commit to the rules, you ain't gonna follow the rules usually, right? And I think Americans in general think like what your comment was, right? A lot of Americans are like, like the dreamers.
Yeah.
A lot of Americans are usually okay with that,
Mm.
right? Like, hey, let the dreamers in. They were little kids. They don't know what's going on, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's gonna be fine. Now, but if you're a dreamer who's burning flags,
Yeah.
and you're doing that stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, wait, go dream somewhere else. In my
Here's
opinion.
another thing. Here's another thing I think that's thanks for that comment. Well, here's another thing that I think is important to bring up is, and again, I'm not talking about anyone specifically. I'm not talking about myself or anybody. I'm just saying, just from my own experience, there are those overstays, illegally cross the border, whatever you want to call them, who are actually actively, because your kids, if you have some kind of citizenship within your family, like immediate family, like a kid or a wife or a husband or whatever, like it's easier for them to file, like they can file for you. But you do have some illegals who overstayers or whatever who aren't active in trying to going to downtown, getting to me, trying to actively get their paperwork. They're just sitting there, they're fine where they're at, they're complete. I mean, they're comfortable where they're at or whatever. You know what I mean? So you do have those two types of illegals or whatever you want to call them. Those who are actively trying to be, because you have to go through the process. I don't know if you guys know, you have to get your green card and you have to wait for 3 years, then file for your citizenship. You can't just like get your green card and then citizenship the next year. You know what I mean? So there's people actively trying to do that, but then you have some who are, like I said, they're just comfortable where they're at. They ain't important me. I'm following the law. I'm cool.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
And I think, like you said, Maka, it does take a lot of time and also finances. You got to pay
Investment.
for all of it. Yes.
We spend a lot of money, man.
Yeah.
But
so it's not easy, huh?
we knew
The lawyers like it.
the lawyers are best friends. They'll show up at your front door in the morning with a muffin, like, "Hey, let's go. You guys ready?"
If it was up to the lawyers, they would make it 7 years with your green card and multiple applications in between.
The longer the better.
Here's a funny one from Tevita Tong. How about the homeowners taking the low bid and the illegal contractor?
That's the economics one.
Hey man, that sound like a personal experience right there, man.
No, I have some Tongan guys too, right? Like they do some contracting work and cement pouring and stuff, and they're like, I hear some of them say, man, some of these Chinese ones are going way lower than their bid, and they're saying, I don't know if they're here in the country. Like, see, those are the economic stuff, because like I said, you're gonna get people, let's just say, who are not came the right way, or they're let's just say illegal status. They're gonna work way cheaper than you, and that affects the money you can bring home. But that's happening here in New Zealand with some of the Tongan guys who are trying to bid for some work. The Chinese are outbidding them, going lower.
Man.
Yeah. No, and that's a good point. I mean, it has an impact. I have another video I wanted us to react to, and this because I kind of agree with you, Masi. I got scolded, attacked, demeaned, whatever you want to say, because said I didn't care about family. I was a terrible person because I took the position you took, right? These are people I love to death, right? But I also said, and I say, if I was in their shoes, I would probably do the same thing, right? Like, if I was just a Tongan in Tonga, and an opportunity came to come to America on a visa, I came to Kumihagmo'ui, I probably would take it, right? Like, I'll be honest, that's probably what I would do. However, I also know what I'm playing with. If you're playing with fire, sometimes you get burned. And I have certain family members that are here, or this was like maybe 10, 15 years ago, were illegal, and I love them to death. And if I was the one making the decision, I would do the decision you made, right, Maka? Make an exception, right? These are good people. I would make an exception for them. But guess what? That's because I know them personally and I interact with them. It's a very biased position. I think so maybe it wasn't 10 years. It was when Trump was in office last time, right? Not this time, but the last time. And I was like, you know what? if Trump deports the illegals and it happens to include these family members of mine, I'll be sad and I'll be disappointed, right? Because it sucks. But at the same time, it is the law, right? It is what it is. I mean, are you going to say that God, therefore, was unfair when he told Adam and Eve, because you made this choice, I'm God, I can do all things? I'm a person who believes God can do all things. I'm not a person who believes that God is limited. I look at how Heavenly Father behaves, and he's like, you know what? Adam and Eve made a choice. We gotta live through some consequences. Now, granted, we're all human beings, right? When I'm the one who's breaking the law, I always want some leniency, but at the end of the day, you're subject to the law. And I was kind of like put down a little bit because I was like, you know what? I love them, but also I don't blame America if America removes them for that exact reason.
So you're saying you were hating on because you said it or because it happened and you were like, oh, hey.
No, because I said it. I said if they got deported,
okay.
because they're saying, so you're saying it would be okay if these people were deported. And I said, I'm not okay with it as a person individually because I love them. I'm okay with it from a systematic and a justice perspective. I can understand why it is okay for the federal government to remove them from the United States. Do I like that decision? Am I the one saying yes, yes, yes? I'm like, no, in this specific case, I'm not for it because there's someone that's close to me. Now, if it's someone I didn't know and I was like, yeah, they're probably breaking the laws, I would have been like, yeah, they probably got to go. And we'll show an example of who I would have been like, yeah, this is somebody that definitely got to go. But any thoughts on that before we go to the video?
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say too. I'm the same with you, right? It's one of those decisions that and that's the one. If your argument can cover everybody, right? And then it's almost like saying what's good for you, but it's not good for me, kind of thing, right? With the people you love, it's a very tough choice. And like I said, I'm gonna help them, like you said, I'm gonna help them try to I don't know how many Tongans that came on visitor visa that I helped them get some work that's gonna pay them in cash. I'm gonna help you, but I'm just saying, even if you're my family or not, you get caught, you should know. You get caught, you get deported. It is what it is. I'll see you in Tonga when I come, but it is what it is. I'm just saying, right? And that's the thing. That's the argument, because I know it's easy for us to say somebody who we don't know intimately as personal like we do with other people. But if they can go, you gotta be prepared for yourself. And let's just say some of your family member, they get caught. It is what it is. You've done your part to try to give them a platform to try to do better for them, and hopefully they did. But sometimes you get caught in the wrong time at the wrong place, or not even that. Sometimes it's not their fault, but because they associated with other people who are probably not so good, and they get caught.
Called on them. Yeah,
called on them, and that's unfortunate. But I'm kind of like you, Dua. It is what it is, kind of thing. But yeah, that's just my thoughts there.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to this video right here. And to me, I think this gentleman here kind of is sharing. So this is one of the guys who went to El Salvador.
Okay.
Right? Like this is one of the homeboys who went there. Oh, I didn't turn on the sound.
Is it possible to get a tattoo like this if you're not a gang member?
No, you gotta kill.
You gotta kill to get those tattoos. How do you feel right now?
Gotta recognize that what happened to us is like that Titanic, that we were big and strong gangs, but we got hit with the iceberg.
Are you gonna be here the rest of your life?
Yeah, the rest of my life. We murdered a lot of people, and this is the consequence of what we did one day. Like, try to act strong in the day and cry in the nighttime.
You cry at night?
Yeah, because we know that we're not gonna get out of here. It's a maximum security prison.
What was the gang that you were a part of?
MS-13.
I mean, I mean, to me, I kind of respect this guy for many reasons, right? I mean, I don't agree with the actions that he did, but to me, he seems to be very fair-minded. Now, granted, I don't know, to go kill people. He sounds like he's killed a lot of people, right? And he made a calculation, and he said, "Dude, I came on the wrong side of the equation, right? I can't complain about it." I have a lot more respect for someone like that, even though I disagree with them, obviously, on the fundamental stuff. But that's a fairly reasonable person. What I struggle with is he goes and kills people, and then he's like, "Yeah, they're so mean to me. They're not treating me right. They're not." And I'm like, Shanna, how many people did you freaking kill?
Yeah.
And you're complaining that you don't get corn dogs every day or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of mentality that I was thinking of, Masi, like when we were talking about earlier, like, hey, you do certain things, all done certain things, and we've all taken risks, right? And we were like, man, I hope this doesn't work against me, but if it did, I deserve what comes towards me.
And you're saying that's what that would be the priority right there, like.
Well, this guy, right? Yeah, 100%, 100%. This is by far the and I think that's what Donald Trump is saying right now. He's saying that's where we're starting, right? Because I don't know, man. The saddest part about the illegal immigration for me is the amount of children that were sex trafficked across the border. That to me is the absolute, like, that's even worse than this guy, right? Like this guy, he was a grown man. He was probably killing people, selling drugs. That's one thing. I would say even a higher priority. All those people, like, I don't know if you guys have seen the videos, but they have kids that are like,
I've seen some of them.
They're drugged, like they're not even awake. Like, yeah, and it's because they found out that if you have a kid with you, they just process you and let you go. Now, can you? This is the reason why process is so important. There's that one thing. If we just think of, oh, yeah, people trying to come here and find a life, well, that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is all the other people who are smuggling in drugs, children, women, right? Like all that. I'm just like, but when you have a stronger process and a system, you can prevent a lot more of that. Because I'll tell you right now, man, the federal government basically paid for child trafficking. Yeah. They literally, they were funding that. And I don't know how you can say God will not hold us accountable for something. If we didn't act on that, then at some point God will say it's not only the people who did it, but the citizens who allowed that to happen for long periods of time. I think you and me and every American would have been accountable of, you knew that was happening, you saw it with your own eyes, and you were okay with it. But
interesting. No, I was just thinking too, with this whole like, we're talking about immigration and stuff. I'm just thinking, like, it's so important. Like, you gotta know the people you're coming in. Because I'm thinking, like, here I am in New Zealand. Remember, same thing with Hawaii, right? The majority of the population were the native people, right? But what happened? You like certain things because you like more labor. Let's just say you're introduced to a lot of muskets and alcohol. When you have an open border policy, things change in a quick second, because a lot of the wars that happened was maybe, I don't know if they weren't thinking, or they just liked having this open door policy kind of thing. Because same thing with Hawaii. What happens when you allow open door policy? You're letting a lot of group of people who think different from you, act different from you, and have a different interest from you. You get those three things, and they become the majority. Like, there can be, the society can be destabilized, and then a lot of changes.
Yeah.
So, like, that's what I'm saying. Even if you're a native person, I'm just thinking, like, even if Tonga will be run down like crazy if we had an open door immigration. So if you think, and that's the thing, you got to make your argument sound to every situation. if you're open door in America, but you don't like it from your native country you come, I don't see why is that different. It's either you hate America, and then but you still like to live in America because of the material things, but you don't want it to happen to your native country kind of thing. But see, I'm just thinking your argument is more sound if you can apply it in all aspects of levels, and that's a more sound argument because, like I said, immigration, man, it's a big deal because let's just say if New Zealand had a more like they only accepted 200 people per year or per month or whatever, who knows? Maybe the natives would have still been in charge today. It just shows you how important immigration is. You got to know who's coming into your country.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me. That's just me there. But
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Maka?
No, that was no, that's get some good insight right there. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me,
don't be a hypocrite, basically.
Yeah, and to me, I'm one of those of when you come across what appears to be a complex problem, the best way for me to understand it is how can I break it down to a personal level for me, right? And for me is my home. How would I be towards someone who just comes whoever, whenever, however they want into my home?
Yeah.
I wouldn't allow that. I wouldn't be okay with that, right? And illegal immigration is just at a bigger scale. Is that? And so to me, if I were an outsider to something and I snuck in, I shouldn't be crying foul if they kick me out. I'd be bummed about it, but they have that right to do so. But trust me, I'm going to try my best to get an opportunity in there, right? And I can't tell you how many times I've snuck into some kind of either a hotel or something that had a really nice pool or whatever, right? Because I wanted to enjoy those things. Of course, we're all human beings. But for me to go in there and then cry foul when they kick me out, that's where I'm saying it doesn't make sense to me, right? And had you guys, was it the Prince Edward Island where that's the really rich place in Massachusetts where Obama and all these guys live. They're all pro illegal immigration until the illegal immigrants were brought to their neighborhood. Then all of a sudden they said, we can't have this. That's the hypocrisy that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Granted, I would have respect for them if they said, okay, come and live in my house. Would I think that was a smart decision? No, I don't think that would be a smart decision for them. But I would at least say, you know what? You at least live what you believe. That I will give you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the problem is a lot of these people who are pushing a lot of this stuff, they don't even really believe it themselves and they don't show it with their actions. But they're like, you know what? Have them all come in, but let them go over there. Don't bring them over here. Right? Because I've seen these interviews of people who are pro illegal immigration walking, and then a guy will pretend, hey, we have a bus through of illegal immigrants. Can you take 2 people into your home? None of them say yes. And they're at a rally saying, let all the immigrants in.
Yeah.
Right? But like we were saying earlier, I disagree with that MS-13 guy.
Yeah.
But I can at least say, you know what? I can at least respect him as a man. He's like, you know what? I gotta suck it up because this is what I chose.
Yeah.
You know, I can at least respect you. Same thing with someone who says, I believe in illegal immigration. I will take illegal immigrants into my house. I was like, well, I don't think that's a smart decision, but
if you're gonna do that,
Now, if you're my cousin, of course I'm gonna take you in because that's different. You might be here illegally, but I don't feel that you're a harm or immediate danger to my family because we're family.
Blood
ties. Exactly. But if the immigration, if ICE comes, I'm not gonna pull out any guns or anything and fight on your behalf. I'm gonna be like, cousin, sorry, man. wasn't me who called on you. Somebody, you
Yeah.
pissed off someone somewhere. They called you and they came and picked you up. And so I told you, don't go hang out with those Noia people because you don't know what they're going to say.
Yeah.
But I'm going to just say, hey, man, I'm sorry, but it's the law. We did our best, but it is what it is.
No, I agree.
Good analogy, yeah.
No, my other thought too, before even if we go something else, I was thinking like you kind of mentioned with the church and its purpose, not right with the whole organization, because I think we all understand that the purpose of government, like country government, national security, federal roads and those things, but they've kind of expanded to a lot of different things. But I was thinking, so what? The church is a bit different, right? When they say that you have to have a prophet, right? So they build everything, and I feel like, right? You call the prophet because that's the mouthpiece of God, but it's from the prophet. That's where everything starts. They're there, right? Let's just say the prophet is where the first building block to this organized, like you said, kind of government. So I don't know. What do you think? What is the purpose then of having an organization of
the church?
Of the church.
Yeah, this is the quickest way to get me kicked out of the church, maybe. But
okay, so we really want to hear it now.
I vouch for you, but if no one takes me serious, sorry too.
Yeah,
Musty's gonna be like, I wasn't the one who called the first presidency, but if the general authorities come here and revoke your membership, sorry, Tua, it is what it is, right? Okay,
yeah.
So here's the thing, because I've as weird as it is, these are some of the things that I've thought through. Like, what is the purpose of the church, right? And because the church, we're all human beings.
Yeah.
The church does certain things that we all don't agree with, right? And we're trying to understand what's the purpose of the church. So the question now becomes, and this is, I'll frame it. This is where the thought process happened for me. The church had a beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everything that has a beginning has a
end.
But I feel certain people think that church is going to be there for forever, right? Like the church was always there; it'll always be there. I'm not convinced of that, and I'll explain it by this way.
Wait, I have one question.
One question.
So you're saying, because I'm thinking, most of those people are thinking the church is going to exist till the second coming of Christ. But you're saying that the church should not exist because there'll be a time period, then the second coming will come, kind of thing. Like, where's the timeline are you thinking? Because I think
don't know exactly.
Okay, because I think most people are thinking the church is going to exist, the organized church organization is going to exist until the second coming of Christ. But it just sounds like you're coming off after the church is not going to exist, then there'll be a time period where kind of, let's just say, there is no organized church leadership that happens, and then the second coming of Christ will come. Is that
well? I don't know if the majority of the church members think that, because when Christ comes, the church will still exist.
Oh, okay.
And there will be an Adam on Diamond. Adam will have what they currently describe as a sacrament meeting with Adam presiding, right? And then Christ will also be there. So maybe I'm thinking wrong, but I think majority of the people think the church is going to be around for forever.
Maybe it's the people I hang around with. Maybe that's
okay. Maybe I mean, we need a survey.
Everybody got their own interpretation, huh?
Exactly. But so the way I think about it is this way, Masi. You have Heavenly Father and Adam and Eve, and they talk to Heavenly Father directly. To me, that's the ultimate goal. Not have anyone between you and your Father, right? That's the ideal. That's how I feel about, because we're in a fallen world. The ideal would be the only government is family. You don't need an intermediary between you and family, right? It's just you, your family talking with other family of yours. That to me is the quote unquote government. The church becomes a necessary tool because we're in a fallen world and we got separated from God the Father. And so I see the church as a tool, not an end. And I see it somewhat similar to the law of Moses. The people in the Book of Mormon, they followed the law of Moses, but they all knew that one day what? Law of Moses is going to end.
Yeah. There'll be a
the
new
government, the structure of the law of Moses. And that's how I see it. We have a prophet today because we're fallen and we're separated from Heavenly Father and Jesus. And therefore, Jesus formed the church because he was leaving. And the church was the tool by which we were going to continue to interact with the Holy Ghost to have access to the Savior. But we're trying to have access to the Savior because ultimately we want access to Heavenly Father. And so for me, one day, I could be wrong, my current thought process is the church is not going to be there. And I think that's why the church has really pushed this new narrative of family-led, church supported. Have you noticed it switched? Because everybody was saying, the church is going to teach my children. The church is going to give me faith. And I've noticed that there's a pretty big shift in the church where the church is like, no, it starts in the family. That's where it needs to start. The church is here to support you, right? But the church was getting so big and it was getting so many programs. Everybody was like, see, I don't have to teach my kids. Just send them off to Sunday school, send them off to mutual. And I think the prophet is being guided by God to say, Ikai, the church is a tool, not the end. And I think that's where a lot of people are, and it leads to a lot of problems as well. This is the same thing with government. When you think federal government or even state government is the solution to your problems, you'll never be satisfied. It's the same thing with the church. If you 100% distribute that responsibility to the church, even if the church is true, you will never be happy. And the reason why is the church is always going to make mistakes. But if you have to take that ownership within your family, right? And that's why the fundamental unit, and this is actually a really interesting thing. The big difference between a lot of political thinking is because, is it the individual that is the center of society or is it the family? I found it that on the liberal side of thinking,
it's the individual.
It's what I want, what I feel, right? Rather than saying, no, it's what's best for my family. Because when you're thinking of the family, that familial relationship promotes unselfish behaviors where you're willing to sacrifice for the greater good of someone else in your family, right? But when it's the individual, when you're just thinking about you, that's a pretty selfish way of thinking, and it doesn't lead to success. And that's where a lot of problems happen. When you're just thinking about what are my rights, what is owed to me, things don't work out too great. And so the fundamental unit of society is not the individual, it's the family. And that's how Heavenly Father intended it to be. That's why he created Adam and Eve and created a family. I think people in the church are making that same mistake, right? They get disenchanted with the church because they're thinking of the church is supposed to give me everything to me and I need everything from the church. And the church is like, no, you got it backwards. Go to your family, apply the gospel principles in your family, lead with your family, right? Get your revelation as an individual within the family, and the church is just providing you the tools to develop that. I don't know if that answers your question, Masi, or
yeah. Well, I have two. Now it just came to me two questions. Like what you're saying, like how about people let's just say, because I'm thinking like there's two different. Because see, this is a cultural thing, because I feel like families, right? Are we talking? Because Abraham, I think of Abraham. When
Hmm.
he traveled, he didn't just go with him and his wife and kids. He went with his nephew. He went with some other clans.
Yeah, people he converted along the way.
Yeah, converted along the way, and that's a more Polynesian way of how they do families today, right? And that's easier to go back because you can find some good families that let's just say, because I'm thinking like the families today, which is just like your immediate family. Let's just say what if their family are just so dysfunctional, they can't go back to their families. The only thing they can have is like the church, and maybe that's why they can't have any families, and they rely on the church to build. They look for the church to really help them to build for their families. So that's what I'm thinking. That's probably where they come from. As a Polynesian, I'm thinking when they say go back to your family, I say, okay, let's just say mom and dad is dysfunctional or whatever, but I have a strong uncle and their family. I can go back, learn, be supported by them, and kind of build off from there, and then use the tool. But I'm just thinking like as a typical Western society, when they say, if their immediate family is just dysfunctional, they don't know where to go. Like
Yeah.
where do they? I don't know. But help. Those are some of
Yeah.
the questions they're
For
probably thinking in that
okay.
kind of
No,
sense.
I got a thought on that, but Maka, any thoughts? Anything you want to add, or you want me to just jump in there?
I'm just thinking of. So I remember when my wife and I got married. And again, this is just like my father-in-law would say. Um, as we get married, before you get married and while you're dating. So while you're dating and then when you get married, you might have the thought, because you'll see the differences. Like
Mm-hmm.
you'll think because your in-laws do something different, you think it's wrong, vice versa. You know what I mean? But I've learned from his experience, he was like, your way is not the right way, your way is not the right way. It's just different. You just have
Yeah.
differences, and you just got to learn how to. There is no right way or wrong way. Like, I mean, of course, we know wrong from right, but I mean, as far as like the way you do things, right?
Mm.
So, I always thought like, and then here was a big difference with me when I got married with my wife was they were a little more immediate family. Like when they said family, they meant brothers, sisters, mom, and dad. When I said family, I meant all the way 10 generations back. That's all my family. You know what I mean? Like, so when I would tell my wife, I would say, "Oh, my family has something in LA. My family has something like that." And she would always ask. Again, I'm not saying she's wrong or right, but just different, right? She would always be like, "Oh, who, your brother, your first cousin?" I'm like, "Oh, no, it's my cousin. It's my family, though." You know what I mean? That's how I was raised. But so when she said family, I would always, it would be the other way around. It was like, "Oh, like who, your cousin?" I was like, "No, my brother and sister." So I'm just, and we just kind of over the years we already have the understanding. You know what I mean? So going to what Masi was saying, I think that's a big, because there was word going around for a little bit, especially a few years ago, specifically in the Tongan wards. They were gonna, you know what I mean? They were gonna dissolve them and kind of
I remember that.
But I think the first presidency or the brethren saw something, and they're keeping the Tongan wards and stuff intact, and that's why we're having so many stakes blowing up, Tongan stakes all over the place.
Yeah.
There's something there that they see, and I feel that's what it is not saying my way being the right way, but we're so communal and we're so family oriented. It's like that's the way I feel the gospel is supposed to be anyway. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. Because ultimately in the eternal, even though our minds don't understand eternity, but I mean, from our definition of what eternity would be in the eternal scheme of things, is like we're all family in the end, regardless. You know what I mean, kind of thing. But on our smaller scale, we're already practicing that already, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Those are just thoughts.
No, 100%.
No, the same thing with like, and that's why I just go back with Abraham when he went with all like
his whole
extended
tribe,
family.
Yeah.
Yes, and I feel like that's just I agree 100% with along with Maka. I think the Polynesians have right with the definition of family. It's not just that little group. It's like your whole. And I feel like when you go to the next life, it's gonna be like that when it's like family. It's like an Abrahamic way of catering your family, because I feel like that's the right way, and that's why I'm saying be interesting. It'll be interesting, like when you say those stuff, because I know more predominantly in the Western culture, they say family is just like like for Parangi, a lot of them don't know their first cousin, second cousin,
Yeah.
even come to their fourth. It's just kind of them and their own thing, which is a lot
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And by the way, just in case they're viewing, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to get my
Yeah.
in-laws or anybody upset, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, like,
No, that's just
it
we're
was
just having a discussion. Yeah.
just in the beginning, you know what I mean? Before one of them sees it and be like, man, that's not how my family would. You know, I'm just saying, like, I'm bringing it
Yeah.
up. That's how I saw it when we first got married. But I mean, my point was to get to that whole of how we see family, like in general, especially Tongans, because I'm using Salt Lake as an example, or Utah in general, because you have like 1, 2, 3, 4. Eventually, we're gonna be having 5 states. I heard they're thinking of another state, 5 states.
It's crazy.
in one state, Tongan. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
And I feel the reason behind that is because of how family oriented we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. So the things that I want to bring up in this discussion is this. When you break down the definition of family to the smallest possible denomination, it's husband and wife. Right? Like that's where family, that's the foundation, right? Like if we use Abraham, it was Abraham and Sarah. Right? Now, when Abraham said, I'm going to follow God, God told me he's going to lead me to a strange land. Yes, there were people that went with him. That was his family. My gut feeling is if they chose to stay behind, like Abraham's father stayed behind. Abraham still would have gone with or without those people, but he would have taken his wife with him. Because to me, that is the fundamental starting point, right? So if we shrink family to its smallest position, it's husband and wife. And so my kind of answer your question earlier, Masi, and build on what Maka was saying is that's where you build from. This is why God says if you want to go doctrinally sound, this is why the husband and wife will become one flesh. Because that's the building block right there. Right? Your wife could come from a dysfunctional family. You could come from a dysfunctional family, but when you two come together, there's an opportunity. And what's the opportunity? To build your own way forward. You may find out later that you thought your family was dysfunctional, but then you just realize that's life. You know what I mean? Like, it's funny how we progress in life and like our ideas of what normal and what was not normal, as you progress with your spouse as to the thing, you're just like, oh man, you know what? Maybe my mom and dad didn't do too bad of a job. You know, it could have been 10 times worse, or it could be the other way around. You may progress and you're like, man, I thought this was great, but maybe it's not so great. You know, I don't know. Anyways, my point is the starting point is the husband and wife. That's the bare minimum of the starting point. That's the opportunity to either break the cycle or continue. If you both think it's a positive cycle, continue it and add to it as you think. So for me, that's where you can start fresh, Masi, right? Where if you don't have a mother or a father or aunt and uncle as a starting point, but when you and your spouse come together, you can consider that your clean slate to try and build something new. Now, I agree 100% that obviously maybe we're all biased. The extended way of living is my preferred way. And I've justified it in a couple ways. I would have, you know how the Western thinking is, oh, I can't wait till my kids get out. I would love to live with my kids, man. I would love to. If I could, I would have a big enough house where if any of my kids wanted to come live with me, I would love for them to live with me. And part of it is because the way we grew up, right, Masi? We had aunts, uncles, cousins. I loved coming home.
Grandparents.
Because grandparents, there was never a time you show up at home and you're by yourself. There's always someone, something going on, and always something to do. Now, I also think of it for this reason as well. The push to be quote unquote independent makes you more reliant or at risk to rely on the government. This Western way of you're measured in success is by how how independent you can be separated from the bigger family. That's how the Western way of thinking is, or at least the American way, right? Like if you're someone that stays with the family, and you
That's a
don't
negative.
break off,
That's a
that's a negative, right?
Yeah.
But think of it from big government. What does big government love? Isolation. The more isolated you can be, the more at risk you are. This is the same thing that big government wants to do with children. They want to isolate children from their parents, because when you isolate them from the parents, then they love big government over the parents. This is also, I think, one of the weaknesses of the Western approach, in my opinion, is when family definition, quote unquote, and everything has pros and cons, right? If family definition is just my little nuclear family, that can be very positive, right? In the situation of my wife and myself, we were always isolated, and it was by choice, right? Because we were always moving. We were never really close to family. That had some pros, right? We were like, we got to figure this out. There ain't nobody besides you and me, you know? It could have gone very bad. It could have gone very good, but there were some pros on that. I also see a lot of pros of being close to family, right? If things go wrong, you always feel that level of, well, I have my brother, my sibling close by, my parents, my cousins. There's definitely a feeling of confidence. And to me, big government doesn't like you relying on family, right? It doesn't even like you relying on your church, which is in a way an extended family. Big government only wants you to rely on them. And why? Because when you rely on government, you're going to vote to keep bigger government, in my opinion. I don't know if that really answers your question, Masi, but I want to dive into a little bit more of what Maka said, but I wanted to give you a chance to give any feedback on that.
Nope, understood. And just a little question. When do you think is it going to be the prophet telling us that the church is not needed anymore before it dissolves, and then, or how do you see that happening, that the church
That's a
has
very
organized?
good question.
How is it going to look like? Like, I'm trying to say, because you're saying if they have its purpose, and then let's just say, who's going to be the person to say, almost like a Donald Trump, we don't need the Department of Education
Guns
anymore.
from China hit Auckland.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna say, with your thoughts, how is that gonna look like with as an organized?
That's a good question,
structure?
Masi. And the only thing that comes to my mind right now, you won't need the church once you're talking with Heavenly Father face to face. That's the only thing I can think of, if that makes sense.
Okay.
When you leverage the church to the extent that you're talking to Heavenly Father directly, that means the church has achieved its purpose. What's the purpose of the church? To get you to talk to Heavenly Father face to face.
Yeah.
Right? We go back to the story of Moses. What was Moses trying to do with the house of Israel? He was trying to take them up to talk to God face to face.
Mount Sinai. Yeah.
Yes. You know, that was his whole thing. He was like, hey guys, let's go. I want you guys to talk to God face to face so that you don't have to rely on me. Right? But what does Israel say? Israel's like, you want us, which is kind of weird. We talked about this, I think, on some of our creation. It's kind of weird where Moses says, oh, you have to walk into the darkness to go talk to God. Right? And then Israel's like, nah, we don't want to do that. You just go talk to God, and then we'll believe whatever you say. Which in a sense is saying, I need a prophet. I need a prophet as a mediator. Just like we needed Jesus to be the mediator with us and Heavenly Father, we added another layer. And if I just put another jab at government, if I haven't done that, we've added another layer of government. You have Jesus as the mediator, a type of government between us and Heavenly Father. Then because of lack of faith, right? Lack of obedience. We even need another layer because it was Jehovah who was there, right? In the Old Testament. We added another layer requiring a prophet. So I am by no means telling people we don't need a prophet. We don't need to listen to the prophet. I'm saying we absolutely need it because we lack the faith. We lack the revelation to do it. However, we must remember that the goal is not to be just obedient to the prophet. We follow the prophet because Jesus said follow the prophet. We follow Jesus because Heavenly Father said follow Jesus. So I don't want us to lose track of the ultimate goal and settle a little too ahead.
I see what Tua's saying. I lean more towards that as well because what you're saying, because for example, like if we want to break it down even more down from, Heavenly Father, the Savior, down to first presidency, stake presidency, to the ward, and within the ward you have auxiliaries and stuff, right? But I remember there's a teaching from President Lorenzo Snow, right? He said at one time, that, and I learned this from one of his books, Presidents of the Church, right? Or no, from a Truman G. Manson lecture. That's where I heard it from. He said that Lorenzo Snow said one time, if we were, as parents, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, there will be no need for auxiliaries. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. So that's kind of going into what you're saying, basically, in some kind of indirect, almost kind of similar way, saying that eventually, once we get to Heavenly Father, there's, you know what I mean? I kind of see what you're saying, too, and I kind of agree with that because that's the whole goal. You know what I mean? Like what you were saying.
Okay.
It's the means to the end kind of thing.
Exactly. I mean, it's the same reason why we have organized government today. Why do we have organized government? Because we know some of us or all of us are going to break the laws. We're going to behave inappropriately. So we have a government to provide some stability because of our fallen nature. If we all weren't fallen, we wouldn't need the government of the United States of America. We would all just behave in a way that we would regulate ourselves. But because we all recognize, if Tua gets a little stressed, gets annoyed, he might kick something, break someone else's property. Well, we need a way to resolve that. Okay, let's have a government. Same thing with the church, in my opinion. Because we know Tua is going to sin, we need to provide a system and a structure by which Tua can mend his relationship or his behavior with God. And that's to help Tua until the day he gets into God, talks to God face to face, and fixes a lot of his challenges. But that's kind of like the purpose of the church, in my opinion. And one day, I think the church is a tool to get us there. Now, where we see a lot of people making mistakes is they graduate themselves a little too early and think, I don't need the church anymore. I already know everything. Well, that's a problem. And that's what the Book of Mormon has showed too. There were a lot of people in the Book of Mormon who said, we don't need to follow the law of Moses anymore. We're going to get rid of that. That was wrong. Who was the one who told them the law of Moses is over? When Jesus showed up. When Jesus showed up, he said, okay, law of Moses is done. Here's the new law. That's what I would imagine one day Heavenly Father will say, you know what? You followed the Savior. Well, you followed the church. You got to the Savior and you continue to follow the Savior. Now you're in my presence. You're good to go now, in my opinion.
All right. I'm good now. Understood.
Okay. I want to discuss something a little bit more, dig into something that Maka mentioned, because I think it's very intriguing, right? Why is it that in the LDS world, only Tongans have stakes? Maybe, I think there's one, maybe Spanish stake
in California.
In California, I think. But why is it that the Tongans are almost the only one? Where they got stakes in New Zealand. I don't know if they got stakes in Australia or not.
No stakes here in New Zealand, Tua. It's only that
Only
California.
wards?
Only
California,
wards.
Utah, right?
Yeah, California, Utah.
Why Maka? I had higher expectations of these guys.
Man, wala rin nga mas sige.
Lahi pelo tuloy.
Man.
Oh, so all the times, Masi, that you mentioned talking to the stake president, ko ikaw pa lang yun?
Mm.
Oh, shit.
Mm.
Ko hubel ya ko ikaw to nga. Anyways, let's just say in the US. How about Australia? There's Australia. There's
I don't
fewer
think so.
Tongans in Australia.
Yeah.
So let's just say even that outside of Tonga, or the country of the Tongan, I don't know any other ethnic group or even within an ethnic group that has as many stakes outside of their country of origin than Tongans.
Mm.
Why
Mm.
is that?
What you think, Maka? That is,
No,
we're
it's
the
funny
smallest.
because we're the smallest, but talking to some of the OGs, it's like it's oh, that's an easy answer because we pay our tithing. That's like that's
Mm.
like that's like a quick,
Which is very true.
which
That's
is
the
true.
practical answer.
But I think not to say that anyone else has less faith, because in order to pay tithing, you have to have faith. Like you don't just pay it because to me it does no good to pay it if you don't have the faith. Like it's almost kind of, I mean, it's still good to pay it regardless, but paying it because you know what I mean, because of your faith versus, yeah, I'm just paying this because I'm supposed to, but really I could use that. You know what I mean?
Checking the box.
A difference,
Yeah.
But I mean, whether you do it this way or that way, you know what I mean? Ultimately, it comes down to again, I'm not trying to say any other ethnicity or whatever has less faith than we do, but I mean, ultimately that's tied into your faith. Like, and to borrow the words of your dad, there was an interview he did one time. He said, we went from the Mehelotu Mua, Kelotu Wetai Mini, like we've been a faithful people from the beginning. We just switched it over here and we just stayed like not just faithful, but like fervently faithful, like, you know what I mean, with the passion, like we, you know what I mean, no question kind of thing.
Nah, 100%.
Almost no, ain't not even faith, but yeah, coming down to faith basically is what.
100%. What are your thoughts, Masi?
Ooh, I think Maka brings a good point with the Lotumua and the Lotumui, having that same continuation, kind of the old and the new religion. I'm trying to think. There has to be something special to allow this to happen, because, like I said, within the Polynesian community, we come from the smallest, population wise. But why are we the ones we're growing in number?
I'm gonna add to that before Tua. Sorry.
Yeah, growing in number with like a Tongan stakes in multiple states in the U.S. Like I said, just with the Polynesian community, it's 0.2 in the
It
U.S.
doesn't make
consensus.
sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I feel like there's gonna be something about, Maka touched on it with our faith, and there's gonna be something that's gonna, I feel like maybe there's gonna be some challenging times for the church going ahead. And when you're gonna talk about defenders of the church, maybe there's gonna be people within that community that will step up and defend the church. And I don't know how that's gonna look like. I don't know. I'm just saying there's something, it's preparing us something in the future. I don't know what it is, or maybe maybe it's the way we fellowship and how we perceive. We kind of touched on Maka and I, Tua, you also touched on it with how we perceive of families. Maybe that's an example that maybe other people can follow. There's something. I feel like there's something in the works, because there's something that's gonna happen, or we need to set an example. There's gonna be something. I just don't know what it is. But when you put our history and just the numbers, it don't make sense why we should be growing in the stake wise. We're the smallest in all our Polynesian neighbors, population wise, and just within the U.S. consensus. But why are we still growing? There's a reason to be it. It could be for, like I said, something with the maybe the leaders, church leadership, see that we can be an example of, or something that's going to happen in the church that maybe, because I do find, like what Maka said, a lot of the like people who grew up in the church are very loyal to the church in any aspect to it, and they will stick with it. And maybe I don't know, it could be something like that the church may need us to be relied upon in the challenging
Okay.
times. But something like that. I don't know what it is, but we'll find
Go-
out.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's just me.
Maka, you said you had something to add.
I don't know if I'm reading through his mind right now, but I think some of it also has to do with, and to kind of with like your brother Lee's sentiments. Like I remember y'all had an interview one time. I know he didn't like using the term empire because it had a negative connotation to it, but because we are, let's just use that term in the good sense, you know what I mean? Because we are descendants of an empire. We were empire builders. We were like we've been building empires. Like if we want to go secular, right?
Yeah,
But it's kind of like it's just. I think it has something to do with that. We're tied into that because if you see versus, let's just say, how you said, again, I'm not trying to put anyone down, but versus all the other Polynesian islands. But if you go back into history, like especially what you guys are trying to push, you know what I mean, as far as where our history comes from, like where was the capital at? It was in Tonga, right?
exactly.
And then if you want to go into the church, it's kind of like we're just doing basically we've been doing this already, kind of thing. That's kind of like how I'm trying to tie it into.
100%.
I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
I am
with the faith. You know
yes,
what I mean?
exactly. And this, I'm 100%. That's where my mind goes, right, Maka and Masi,
Man.
because
Great minds think alike. No, I'm just playing.
Turi loa tawa me siya, see?
Hey, you know. All right, disclaimer: these are for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah, this is not official doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ. Because Water Bears is gonna write President Nelson and say, "Hey, go and check on this podcast, President Nelson."
Check on the president of the podcast.
Oh, see, Maka, this is the only case where Masi is gonna be the one that will report on us. Masi and Water Bears. Set us up. Set us up. Well,
you got proof here. We're just playing now. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, see, and that's the thing. I 100% like when you look at it, you remove all context, right? You're just looking at the numbers. It makes no sense, right? So that's how I kind of look at it. Is you start with let's take out all the context and just like the smallest group, right? The ones who have not only the smallest group, but as a group has been in the US probably the shortest
time, yeah,
right? Because at least with our brothers and sisters from Samoa, they had American Samoa as a stepping stone, right? Yes, the access to come to America, they were decades ahead of us. Head start, right? And so so you look at that, you look at us and coming in, and then you look at why is it the LDS Church as a percentage, Tonga is the highest percentage of a country, members of the church. And then you go and then you're like, well, let's look at the history of these people. Like what kind of people are, and then you look at like what you were saying, Maka, they were shutting down wards, right? They were shutting down like language speaking wards. And then once it hit the Tongan group, it stopped. Like it got to the point where all of a sudden the brethren said, "Oh, shut down." But then when it got to the Tongans, it stopped. Now there's some stories that Groberg had an impact on that, right? Like there were some stories of that like who knows if it's true or not. That Groberg's like, you can't remove the Tongan culture from a Tongan and they won't be Tongans anymore. Right. And they bring something to the church, whatever. There's some story to that. But I look back and I say, this is tied to our thinking of government. What was the Tongan government from anciently? It was the Tu'itonga from the old religion. And what was the Tu'itonga? The Tu'itonga was a representative of Hikuleo. He was basically a prophet. He was basically a representation of Hikuleo. And that's why we did the Polo Polo. It was basically a tithing, right? And then not only is there that tithing aspect of it, this government or this culture permeated into everything that our ancestors did. The kava ceremony. There was a purpose of the kava ceremony. Everybody had a spot to sit in. there was structure, there was order, there was the Caveingas, right? So it wasn't just a polo every once in a while. There was, hey, we need to do something for the chief in our village, for the noble in our district, for the Tuitonga. What? That is the bishop. That's your elders quorum president needs to do something for the bishop. So these are things that our ancestors have been doing for thousands and thousands of years, right? And nowhere more concentrated than in Tonga, right? And I'm a big believer, and this is actually proven science. What you call Jordan Peterson was the one who kind of revealed this. When you make certain decisions, it actually changes your DNA, right? Like he describes it as there are parts of you that you unlock by the choices that you make, right? Like when you fua kaveinga for the first time and it breaks your back, believe it or not, that actually builds up your ability to fua more kaveinga, right? And it's the fight or flight. Instead of running away from it, I'm going to stay. And our ancestors have done that for thousands and thousands of years, right? There have been families where the Tuitonga said, you're going to go and stay on these group of islands for 3 to 5 generations. And they go and stay on those islands. No different than going on a mission, no different than being sent on the Lord's errand. What I'm trying to say is it is literally in our DNA. With, you know, the brethren used to call it back in the day. You don't hear it as much anymore. But in the early parts of the church, they called it the believing blood, right? There are just certain people that just have what they call the believing blood. What does that was supposed to mean? That when they hear the gospel, it just rings a lot easier for them than others. And why is that the case? It's not because Masi or Maka did anything great. It is over long generations of time, there has been consistent choices that have led to consistent behaviors that ring true. This is why I believe God specifically told Abraham, I'm going to kind of separate you from everyone. Right? And he told them he didn't want them intermarrying. Like God, in the beginning, God was really strict with the Jews. Like if they intermarried with other people, he cut them off. Right? And I believe he was developing this quote unquote believing blood over time, meaning once he had to develop it like generations after generations of making certain choices and certain behaviors, then all of a sudden, once you develop that blood can now go everywhere. Because everybody has now the blood of Israel. Whether you believe it or not, I'm a believer that everybody has it because the 12 tribes were scattered everywhere. So everyone has that. But I also believe in certain areas it was a little more concentrated and for specific reasons. But that's why I kind of going along with what you're saying, Maka, is I think there's so many cultural, social, and behavioral reasons why Tongans are doing what they're doing. And it's not because the Tongans of today are in isolation and some unique thing. It's like, no, dude, they've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. It's almost like we can't help ourselves but do it. But yeah, I mean, to me, whatever reason, I agree with Masi. I think there's a reason and a purpose for it, and we'll see what God has in store. But that's my 2 cents right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Any thoughts? Anything else to add to that, or we want to jump to the next thing?
No, I'm good.
Not to go back to previous conversation, but just a thing I forgot because it just popped into my head. But how you're mentioning needing a prophet or the government or the church or whatever after, you know what I mean? Once we get whether we need it or not. I just remembered what's his name? What's that guy's name? Abraham Gileadi or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
When he mentioned there's something that stuck out to in one of his interviews where he said, you know, he said, that's why I never like when people say follow the prophet. He's like, I don't follow the prophet. I follow Christ, you know?
Yeah.
The prophet ultimately is who,
yes,
he said he himself is telling us not to follow himself, but follow the Savior. You know what I mean? So that's why I thought that was just something I thought of when I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about the whole point of it is to follow the Savior, Heavenly Father, you know?
No, 100%. And I have 2 comments on that, right? There are, like, for example, the word of wisdom, right? That's an interesting topic. One day maybe we'll get into it. But I follow the word of wisdom because, you know, some people say, oh, we follow the word of wisdom because it has all these health benefits. Me personally, I was like, those are debatable, right? Some of those are debatable. And I even say there's even debate on how the word of wisdom should be applied. And some people will criticize me and say, so what are you saying, Tua? You say we should be going out there and drinking beer and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. All I'm saying is I follow the word of wisdom for a very different reason than you do. You go, what do you mean by that? Is you always tell me you follow the word of wisdom because it makes you healthy. And I said, maybe it does. I don't disagree with that. But I follow the word of wisdom despite my personal perspective on it because God said, follow the prophet. That's why I follow the word of wisdom. Right. And that's why I do it. Even though it's just like when you follow your parents, you can disagree with your parents and you could be right. But that's not what God asked you in the 10 Commandments. He didn't say, honor your parents when they're right, but don't honor them when you're right. He said, no. You honor your parents across the board. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you honor your parents. So why does that matter to me? Well, if the prophet came out tomorrow and said, it's okay to have a beer, I guarantee you some people are like, oh my gosh, the church is fake and it's not true. And, you know, beer is unhealthy for you. I'm like, no, my job is to follow the prophet. Right. And I think there's certain values to that. And we don't have to get into the doctrinal side of it tonight. But for me, that's a very important way of how I follow and obey things is, you know, the prophet said so, like Gileadi says. And why do I follow the prophet? Not because he is some amazing blah, 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 but because Jesus said, follow the prophet. And then why do I follow Jesus? Because I believe Heavenly Father said, follow Jesus. So there is a line of authority that I just say, that's the line. Right? Just like I honor my parents, I try my best. I guarantee I fail all the time, but I try to honor my parents, not because my parents are some untouchable thing, but it's God said, I need to honor my parents. Coming back to that guy, that Abraham Gileadi guy, one thing that he said, very interesting. He was asked by the guy on, was it on Quick Media?
Yeah.
Madsen? Quick Media, yeah. So they were talking about Isaiah, right? The book of Isaiah, because that's Abraham Gileadi's like expertise, right? Because he has his own translation. Here's a fascinating question that this guy asked Abraham Gileadi, because in the Book of Mormon it says that the descendants of Lehi will return to quote unquote the promised land and inherit the promised land. And they asked Abraham Gileadi, who do you think is the best group to represent the descendants of Lehi returning to the promised land? He said Polynesians.
Yeah, I think I remember that part.
Yeah, that's who his guess is of the leading candidate. Now, does that mean anything? Well, no, it's not a guarantee, but kind of interesting.
Be a good guess though.
Yeah, and then one, so that's kind of interesting, right? I mean, yeah. But yeah, those were a couple things right there. Any thoughts on that?
Nah.
Okay.
No.
So I think we'll skip the PBD podcast, and we'll kind of come back to Tonga. I know we say we're going to talk about some of the role of government in Tonga. So there's this one video that I wanted to share, and it's let me see here. it has some feedback back and forth between the what is it, Radio Nucalofa 88.6.
Oh, okay. And
FM.
what's that guy? Lala and what's the
Mandela.
other guy?
So it's just Manlala. It's just him. So
Oh, okay.
this lady, I think, is from Australia, and she's at that summit or whatever, and she's going to talk about her frustrations of trying to invest back in Tonga, right? And Manlala kind of gives some English commentary and summary on it.
Okay.
Let me make sure I have the volume on.
Hello, Sioana. Ofatuka ko Sioana. Continue. I absolutely love what she just said here. What she said is she's been working in Australia for 26 years. And in that 26 years, she's been saving and saving. And what she also said, which I absolutely love, is when she has her saving or she's looking at her savings, she's not thinking of investing back in Australia. No. She's only thinking of investing back into her homeland, back in the Kingdom of Tonga. To the government, PM, cabinet ministers, the leaders of our country, this is what they have to go through from overseas. When they call into the Kingdom of Tonga, they call into one department. They say, no, you need to call another department. They say, no, you need to call another department. In Australia, there's something called a super, where they put in their money into the super, put in their money to the banks in Australia.
Masi, do you know what the super is? Is they have that in New Zealand? Is that like a retirement fund or something?
Like your social security
Oh,
stuff.
so that's the equivalent of Social Security.
Social security and like your what's the other retirement that you put into your bank account, and your employer puts that percentage in?
Pension.
401k.
401k. Yes, and that's their form of 401k, Social Security. Yeah.
Okay.
People like her have taken out their super. They've sold their houses. They want to come back to Tonga. But the only reason why they don't is because it is very difficult to find out any information about how to invest in Tonga. She urges the government to please, is there a chance of setting up a call center that we can call that call center and give us all the information. Instead of calling one number, then they tell you to call another department's number and another department's number. She mentioned she's been here for 3 months. She's been going from one department to another department to another department to another department in that 3 months. And she's going to do it because she wants to gather all the information to be able to help her fellow Australians that's behind her that wants to do the same, that wants to take out their super, that wants to sell their homes, that wants to invest in the Kingdom of Tonga, to help them to invest in Tonga.
Kung whakaamoang e mai. E ai ha whahinga toka ngai kina mawahe mua ki mautolo. Talo e ku whakautua he. Tala noa lalahi pe pureanga tonga aia. Kai mana tua ki mautolo koe mau mea pena e whai koe whaloho mau ni maa mei muri. Po mau whalawang e ko ki mautolo koe whalope. Ko iai e ngahi aikon lalahia I muri e tau whanau. Ka pange ko ato kua nau fui a he o miki tonga ni. Pureanga. Ka iai mua ha whahinga whaunga. E si tokanga e kina ki mautolo ko mau whoki mei muri. Mau omi mo ta ilo. Mau omi pe mo beak mau ko mau omi o whoki ki api. Tako e amanaki lere e mau omi o whoki mai ki api ni. Ko mau omi o kutari lele yange ki mautolo.
She also calls out to the government of Tonga. She sat in the back and listened to the government talk about big things in here in the Kingdom of Tonga, forgetting the little things that needs to be done, forgetting the Tongans overseas. Remember the little things to help us be able to retire and invest back in the Kingdom of Tonga.
Koi kulere mai ke whakahoha atu pe. O ku iai si o mau ni ihi. Ku mau tuku pā ke mau whai ngā ue mātonga pe mau whoki ki api. Na awahea atu mu. Ha te pui mākai he whanua. Ke tokanga kina ki mau tolu. Ko mau tuku pā ke mau whoki ki tonga. Lewe vai malanga kau tatawa.
And to end it is from me. This is a true fact from Sioana about working with the Kingdom of Tonga, working with the government of Tonga. It is very, very hard. You know, you go from one department to another department. She's talking about her experience wanting to invest from overseas here in the Kingdom of Tonga, wanting to retire from overseas here in the Kingdom of Tonga. Her money will be able to go into our community. But let's talk about the locals. How hard it is for us locals here in the Kingdom of Tonga to be able to get something done with the department of any department of government. It's always the same thing. One department to another department to another department, and then go around again and queue on another department to another department to another department. Why is it so hard for us, the government, to be able to make it easy for the people of Tonga, our Tongan people from overseas, to be able to do anything here in the Kingdom of Tonga, especially if you have to go through a government department? Ko iai tonga kotoa, whanongo ki he kore koe ni, whanongo ki he tangi koe ni, me he kainga koe me muri. Tau whenga ha mea ke whaingo fua ke nau tolu, ke nau mauha information, ke nau lava o retire mai ki Tonga, ke nau lava o mai nau se ni tiki Tonga. Heilo, na tokone se ni tiko ni, ke ekonomi koe atau whanua. O whātu.
Whina matua au whakahoha ako ping.
Touch.
Man. So, my bad. I'll go ahead and go first, but my bad to cut you, Bussy. But so this brings to my mind. There's actually he's not a Tongan per se, but he's married to a Tongan too. She's actually my auntie, actually, but where he's staying at is in Tonga, and that part of my auntie's family, like he's with those guys over there in Nuku Nuku, you know what I mean? But this guy's a Palangi dude, his name is Terry Wallace. That's the name
I've seen him on YouTube.
You seen him on YouTube?
Yeah,
I seen some of his stuff.
So does that remind you of what he's talking about, or have you watched?
Yeah, because he would spend all that time standing in line, and he keeps delaying his return.
Yeah,
because things are taking forever.
Yeah, 3 or 4 months he was like there for a while.
He had to extend his visa because he couldn't get anything done. But what she's talking about, that's the first thing I thought of was Terry, because again, because he's not Tongan, he had to get approval to get land that leased from
Tuibacano's property.
But and was able to get that approved. So he got that done, and then you've seen a mixture of it's not what you know, it's who you know, but you still had to go through from one department, like, but he was getting like what that lady's talking about, like the runaround, you know, like he circled around and came back to the same department. And then they finally told him one thing, like, oh yeah, you're gonna get this email, whatever. We've been working on it. Come to find out, the stuff he's been working on for the last month and a half, 2 months, nothing's been done. They have to start over, like, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So that's my thought on that. That's what came to mind. And I think it's, and I know he's not the only one. He's just being a little more like providing like some visual to it, because he's documenting it every day. If you watch his video, he's like, all right, I'm going into town, whatever. But he's documenting every step to kind of help everybody, which I think is good, because he's helping people out to kind of, like, you know what I'm saying? See what they're going to have to go through, be prepared. But I see what the lady is saying, and you know, I feel bad for her, because I know, again, she's speaking for everybody who's trying to do the same thing. And I don't know what they have to do, if they have to like revamp the infrastructure or whatever, you know what I mean? Because I don't know if you ever had to do that in Tonga, like, because couple times out, and I'm planning on going out to Tonga more in Bavau later this year, and I'm like, because you know how it is, it's a typical, not to speak badly, but you know, more not that and then something will get done or whatever, but it's kind of like, you know, it needs to be a little more organized. So I kind of, like, in a sense, feel her pain, and I know what she's talking about, because it's not as organized as it should be, and I know, like, with the money that we can provide from here, whoever's trying to put money back into Tonga, it's not gonna make Tonga like a multi-billion-dollar island, but it's something, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like they're not prioritizing that, because maybe they have other stuff on their mind, bigger money or whatever, but it's just, that's more money still, regardless, you know what I mean? They could come back into the island from your own people, you know what I mean? So,
100%.
Yeah, that's my little 2 cents.
What's your thoughts,
nice,
Masa?
Definitely agree with Maka. This is how kind of far back Tonga has been. This current prime minister has just said that when you have your lunch break, that you still have to open your ministry, because in Tonga you had your lunch break between 12 to 1. You couldn't do anything. You know,
Wow.
they'll put a sign, lunch break, come back on this time. So now the government has just set a mandate. Even if you have lunch break, you got to have somebody still manage the office.
Working.
So still working. So, you know, I think this kind of thing is gonna, and this is probably the thing that needs to happen, that there needs to be probably serious conversation that's going to hurt some people's feelings, that things need to improve greatly in order to really get optimized and just get our economy just kind of going. Because I feel like the government, many past governments, it's good. There's been a lot of focus on getting financial aid from other countries, from other things, and people have been neglected. So this is kind of the sacrificial lamb that's kind of been happening. They do all these government official meetings and stuff to other countries and get those big aids from other countries, because, you know, they're huge aids, but then there's been a lack of improving the service for Tongans in Tonga and Tongans overseas. And this is kind of right. It's gotten this bad, and it hasn't gotten better. But to me, what that lady was saying is, I think a call center is not enough to it. There's going to be some, because you can get the call center and call, and then you can transfer them to that ministry, but it doesn't.
Same thing's gonna happen.
Same thing's gonna happen. They're gonna say, "Oh, then call back another time," or just say, "We'll transfer you to another ministry," because they're in charge of that. Then you're still gonna do that, but it's gonna be over the telephone. So I think the call center is a good first point, but you need. I think Danny talked about it. I don't know if you're familiar with Pitapua. Maka, he's kind of like a very well-known political guy that kind of people get a lot of view, that he's kind of real respected, that he gives his opinion and stuff. He had an interview with our older brother. There needs to be there's a lot of degrees in Tonga, but they don't have it's the necessary degree of behavioral organization management. That's what Tonga needs. We need that kind of people in Tonga, because it's a behavioral thing that needs to drive that change within the ministry to provide and see, because right now it's not even the minimum. It's really, really bad. at just meeting the basic service. So to me, there has to be a behavior organizational change that
Yeah.
somebody tough that needs to do it. And when you got to do those organizational change, you're gonna step on some toes on some people that's probably it's gonna you're gonna probably take some heat from it, kind of like Elon Musk, what he's kind of doing. It's like we have to do these audits, but we're gonna say the names and what's happening. People are burning his Tesla stations, and it's kind of hurting him financially. But we need somebody kind of like that to Tonga, and Tonga needs to advocate that they want somebody like that. And the thing is, there hasn't been that political will so far because Tonga has been kind of been in this funky situation of be more democratic, and then people who are constitutionalists and the monarchy. There's been that divide for a while, and that's another thing that's been affecting Tonga too. Is they've been focusing that and big government aids and neglecting the people and improving their services. So to me, there needs maybe a couple people, a good group of people that the government needs to. I feel like they need to go in a recruiting agency because there's people within the Tongan diaspora or even people in Tonga that you got to have the political will to let them do their job and defend them. Because the thing is, just like anything you do in government politics, you don't attract the best people because you're going to get slandered or be bullied if you don't have a strong political will of people to back you up. Because what has Trump been doing? Trump's been defending Elon Musk doing his job because it's not easy. So that's the thing Tonga needs, in my opinion, to really improve. Like what you said, Maka and like Terry kind of went through, because people shouldn't be staying 3 months just to get documents to do a business. They haven't started actually doing work, and they've already spent a lot of, because it's not cheap having money there when your family's still back in overseas and kind of trying to, because that costs time and money. But that's just me. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think this is the way I'm going to kind of tie it to some of our earlier discussions, right? What is the role of government? The role of government is to not get in the way. Take care of the bare minimum, right? Take care of the bare minimum and don't get in the way. And right now, what we're all describing is the government's in the way. Money wants to come to Tonga, government's in the way. Whether it's they're not paying attention to it, right? Or they don't have the right people, but the reality is the government is in the way. And I've been a believer of this, and I know, from what that lady is saying is, I think Tonga needs to forget about this big money stuff. They need to get away from it, in my opinion, right? This is the same the concept as we look at the church. We look at the church and what Tongans have been able to do in the church outside of Tonga, right? This tells me that, like this lady, the level of dedication and sacrifice that Tongans are willing to do for Tonga, right? Yeah. And I'll share this to kind of be an example. We'll jump on this real quick. And this is why the Tongan government and their strategy needs to change. They need to forget about this big money overseas. You know who their big money is? Tongans. They need to stop worrying about that, in my opinion. If they wanted a radical change, the only thing they should worry about these big money overseas is for infrastructure. If they want to redo the roads real quick, they want to build bridges, they want to build like little wharfs and stuff, hospitals and stuff, big money. You can go for that. Outside of that, this investment in financial and business commerce, they shouldn't even be looking at any money besides Tongans. And I'll kind of explain why this logic is. There is the church, there is that relationship, but the only thing that keeps the Tongan economy afloat are foreign Tongans
sending the money back.
Well,
this is the thing. Maybe they just want to keep they don't want Tongan overseas to come back to Tonga. They just want them to keep. Now we pay Moody or shit or retire. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
No, it could be that could that's what I'm saying. But that's government getting in the way. Like you could be right, Masi, because What does a foreign Tongan bring that threatens? It is know-how and it is influence.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? A donor, a unknown donor who has no interest in Tonga directly, has no threat.
Yeah.
It actually empowers the political arm in Tonga.
The status quo. Yeah.
Yeah. Right? But Tongans from overseas coming with know-how is a threat to the current structure of the government.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, once again, government getting in the way, the government not doing its role. Right? But you look at here, I mean, you look at some of this stuff, right? Economically, remittances are a dominant source of foreign exchange, often outstripping exports and foreign aid. Okay. In 2021, personal remittances were estimated at a US 220 million, equivalent to roughly 44% of Tonga's GDP. Okay.
Wow.
Forget about the big money. Your big money are the Tongans overseas.
Yeah.
That lady who was just speaking right there, that is your big money. They need to forget about, like, honestly, if I was in charge of Tonga, I would say forget about going after these quote unquote big donors or these big investment firms, right? Because the reality is this: Tonga is not a big enough market. You're talking to the wrong people. You could have the best idea in the world, but Tonga does not have millions of people. So you need to go to talk to the people who are invested in Tonga. These people who are working overseas, they're sending $220 million a year. You scroll down here to the bottom. In short, remittances keeps Tonga afloat, driving consumption and stability, but they are a double-edged sword, fueling dependency while under-delivering on structural growth. The economy leans hard on this diaspora lifeline for better or for worse. So, once again, infrastructure, big infrastructure projects, okay. Go to the UN, go to the World Bank. You can get those, and you'll get those far and in between. But in regards to building economic opportunity and investment for everyday commerce and economic growth, it's a no-brainer. Forget about the foreign aid. And so what should they do, in my opinion? They need to set up a one-stop shop. They need to have a handful of people that their job, it's like, you know, when you go to college or any business and they're trying to say, here's a one-stop shop and here's a person that's going to guide you through the process. They need to assign people like that. And the reason why is maybe the first 15 people, it'll be hard. But after this individual has helped 10 or 15 people go through the process, they know. And for the investor, they're dealing with one person, right? And they need to facilitate that, because I'll tell you right now, they're preventing hundreds of millions of dollars coming into Tonga because of this. And here they are standing in line, competing with other people to get certain grants and stuff, when there's literally hundreds of millions of dollars dying to come in. But why is it not coming in? They're focusing on the wrong thing. And the reality is, you remove these people like her, like Terry and your aunt, the Tongan economy dies.
Yeah.
It dies. These are the people. And that's what I'm saying. Like, understanding how things really are will really change your focus. Forget about these bigger things. Dude, I would be of this. You know, when you do all this advertising for tourism, I would say don't make non-Tongans your target. You know who your primary target should be? Tongans. Because you have your Tongans come back to Tonga, meeting their family. Guess what that does for remittances? Goes up.
Yeah. It just reaffirms their commitment.
Exactly. So all this. See, this is the kind of stuff of just like practical. If the Tongan government would just look at what keeps the economy alive, you take care of the hand that feeds you, and the hand that feeds you is not a billionaire in Dubai. It's not the World Bank. It's Tongans, right? That's where you go. That's where you focus. Instead of sending a delegation to go to China for tourism, send them to freaking LA. Send them to San Francisco. Send them to the churches.
Yeah.
Set up programs to bring the youth. That's what was one of the cool things about Shiwaki Levi and some of these people who are sending these groups of youth to Tonga. Dude, you're reinforcing those relationships, because once a Tongan is in Tonga for like the second or third generation, that remittance level goes down. So you need to bring them back, reestablish it, and then that brings them more interest in investing in Tonga. Like that should be the focus. And unfortunately, the government doesn't have the vision. They don't have the organization. They don't have, they're doing things the way they're doing it because that's what people have done for forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go back to how Tonga stayed independent. Tonga remained independent because what did they say? We're going to bet on the Tongan people. We're not going to give other people land. We're going to have the Tongans keep the land. We're going to invest in our people. Tupou the First didn't say, I'm going to go bring in, this or that. He said, you know what? I'm going to empower the Tongan people. I'm going to give them freedom. I'm going to give them land. I'm going to have them work and develop the land. He focused on the people, the Tongan people. How do I protect them? How do I give them opportunity? Right?
Tongans. Yep.
Exactly. Some of the critics of what happened in Hawaii, what a lot of the upper class in Hawaii did? They kept going and living in Europe and traveling. And they neglected. And what happened? They came back after traveling Europe. Hawaii was lost.
Yeah.
Right? And so that to me is what the Tongan government needs to focus on. I guarantee you, how much was it to build a wharf in Afa? 5-10 million?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Dude, I'm guaranteeing you could figure out if 220 million a year comes from remittances, you can figure out some kind of way to incentivize people in Tonga from regions to say, hey, if you guys pull together 5 million, we'll build a wharf. We'll find a way to charge people to use it. You get back your investment on a payment. I don't know. Who knows? There's a lot of ways you can be creative to build that, right? There's a lot of things that you can do. And I think the Tongan leadership needs to figure that out. They need to figure that out on how do we provide economic opportunity, right? And there's going to be another example, another easy one. Here's another easy one. Have Polynesians overseas have some type of investment system where they inject cash, whether it's to the Tonga Development Bank or some kind of bank, to give out loans to businesses. Right? And then they get some kind of return on that. I mean, there's a million ways you could make this work. But what are they doing? They're focusing on the wrong thing. They're focusing on what the Philippines does. Well, the Philippines has tens of millions of people, a huge market that's probably worth billions of dollars. Tonga can't compete with that. Any kind of thoughts on that? And then there's another video I wanted to kind of show.
Yeah. So, and comes to the question. I've been kind of going back and forth between this question here. Maybe you and Maka can give me your thoughts. And I'm probably leaning towards that maybe we should allow it, especially if you have a Tongan passport and you have Tongan land. Those are the two criteria I'd say. That Tongans from overseas should be allowed to vote wherever their land is allocated to. That's my opinion. I've talked to my older brother about that. He said, no, you have to be in Tonga. But I was like, no, I mean, the thing is, the traveling on the Tongan overseas, they got to go to, I think, Sydney, San Francisco, and here in Auckland. Those are the big three places that most majority of Tongans live at, and there's an embassy at. Tonga should be, and that's the thing to us, it's just a vision, should be able people either a day before the elections to vote wherever their land is located at, and whoever's the running to represent that. Tongans overseas should be able to have a say on who should represent their country, because like I said, this is a rowing boat. One, the right side are your families that live in Tonga and holding the front on that end, and then the left side is you funneling that financial buying power wherever you're at. Because like that lady said, she worked in Australia for what, 26 years, but her commitment has always her mind has always been in Tonga, and the ones who care about Tonga will have the Tongan passport, will have the deed to their land or the title to their land in Tonga, and they're going to keep it valid within their family. You got to have those two criteria to be able to vote in Tonga and do it overseas. And that's your job to, if you're living like, say, Maka's in Utah, that's your job to go there before the election day in Tonga to get to San Francisco, cast your vote, who you're going to vote for that represents the best interest for you and your family in Tonga. That's what I'm thinking. That I think that's something that's a visionary part that the government of Tonga can do. But I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts? I talked to my older brother. He's more of the old school. No, you have to be in Tonga to vote, and be in the country. No need to do it overseas. But I don't know what your guys' thoughts are.
I'll take a next swing at it, and then Maka can add in there. When I look at what drives the economy, I say, why not? If the Tongan economy only exists because of foreign Tongans, why would you not try to cater to that? Right? Why would you not want to cater to that? That doesn't make any sense to me. If your number one customer, the Kingdom of Tonga's number one customer, are Tongans overseas, I would say it would be in the best interest of the Kingdom of Tonga to figure out a way for that. Because you remove that, like we just looked at, 44% of the GDP is from outside. And then what's foreign aid going to be? Another 30%. So, okay. And I think that's something really important. And look at it. The people in Tonga are suffering because the current government is not focused on the right customer. If they were focusing on the Tongans overseas, where, you know what, if they could vote, trust me, I promise you they'll start paying attention. They would figure out ways to make investing in Tonga more efficient.
Possible. Yeah.
Right.
And this is not only this current government. This is multiple governments since that's been neglecting the Tongans overseas
interests.
and interest.
Yeah. So I mean, I would 100% be open to that and consider that. Is what I will say is this: what's currently happening is not working.
Yeah.
You know, so something's got to change. What are your thoughts, Maka?
No, yeah. So I agree with you exactly. Like I say go. They should go ahead and allow it. But to add to that also is especially like what Masi was saying, especially if you have land in that certain part or whatever, they should allow you, because that not only affects them, because say for example your land is not being developed, then I got to come over there and the right person wasn't voted on. I got to go through all these loopholes and all these run around again to help develop the land and bring money back into like that whole thing. The easy way is, like you said, they should allow it. You know what I mean? Have it as an option at least, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's constitutional or is that, I don't know how that, for that to be changed. Is it a law or something? Or?
The law right now is you have to be in Tonga, but that's something, like you said, if the government had if they were just put some effort and time to think of where the money's coming from, just make it easier for Tongans to vote. I feel like they can do it. They can do it. Samoa's already talking about having them just to go to their U.S. Or their Samoa consulate that to make sure the Samoans overseas are the ones who are keeping that are are part of the thing. You don't have to go to the country. And I feel like
Yeah.
to me the ones who really care, and to me like it has to be those two things: Tongan passport holder, and you got to wherever your land is situated at.
Yeah.
Those would be the criteria that you
Yeah.
should be able to have to vote, because that is your land. You know.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
they
just
and I'm if they were to set something up like that, they can check it. You know what I mean? If you go up
yeah.
there and they allow it, or but I mean, my question was, do you know if that's like, I don't know how to, as far as the Tongan government goes, is that like a bill that has to be passed for them to
Yeah,
allow
they
that,
just
or
create a law. Yeah,
oh, got
Yep.
you, okay,
yeah,
Yep. You just
you
have to
know.
create a law.
And if it is spelled out in the Constitution specifically, which I don't know, but that's why you have amendments,
Mm.
right? You create an amendment and you allow that to happen. But it to me, they have to figure something out. They have to, and honestly, they owe it to the Tongans overseas. We're not trying to be like over rude to anybody back in Tonga. Hey, that's great, but it doesn't make sense for that in America. Because why? Because the wealth that's generated within America is within America, right? So that doesn't make sense. In Tonga, the wealth that's generated in Tonga is from outside of Tonga. So they do owe that to the Tongans outside of Tonga. And it's in their best interest in Tonga, because that is the revenue driver. You know, like I said, I mean, 220 million a year.
yeah.
There's 100,000 Tongans. I
I
mean,
wonder if those numbers, if they're even aware of that or not. Or I'm not trying to
they
doubt
do.
them. But I'm saying,
They do.
wonder
They even try to tax it and do all kinds of stuff to it, right? But I think it's, people will resist it because of politics. I think there are people in Tonga who, if they were to look at it, would fear it, because, oh my goodness, like they're giving a lot of power and influence outside of Tonga, and maybe they don't like that, right? People, you got to remember, there are people who like things to be bad or not improve, at the very least, not improve, right? The status quo makes the people in power feel okay with the way things are. But I think that's a great idea, man. I think that's something that should be pushed, in my opinion, because the numbers almost demand that.
Yeah.
The numbers almost demand that. Like, it is undeniable that the biggest stakeholders in the world I come from construction, the stakeholders are the Tongans outside of Tonga. They are major stakeholders because they are driving the Tongan economy. They're like, nobody disputes that. Nobody disputes that it is Tongans outside of Tonga who drives the Tongan economy. Why would you not want to include them?
Well, and that's and that's the thing. I'm just like, it could be a purposely thing, because like there's a lot of smart people, people with masters and doctorate degrees, and they get elected in parliament. But for some reason, for the since 2010, it's like things have been just not really any improvement. But like that's what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't know why they haven't tried to cater more services to the people, and they just focus. It's always the focus on these foreign aids and having these big meetings, and the service is just for the Tongan people, and the Tongan people overseas is just so lacking. But I'm just saying, man, it could be a intent thing to do, just to say, you know what, just let the Tongans overseas just do it the way it is now, and let me run the way the government's been running in Tonga. Because I get my, let's just say when there's less smart people in the room, it's easy to be the person everyone comes to tell what to do. But let's just say you get some couple smart people, you have to battle your ideas to see which one rises to the top. That's a lot of work. Because I'm just saying, why would you want smart Tongans who've done well overseas to come, who they say they want to come back, and then they don't like how things are running? Then when they've lived there in Tonga for a little bit, they might run against you. I don't know. I'm just thinking this is such a common sense that, like, people are just leaving the way it is because they like what their little area that they're doing in Tonga. But I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm just thinking because this, to me, it's common sense. But
yeah, And
Yeah.
and the reason why I asked, thanks, Musty. The reason why I asked that earlier, if you think they're aware of those numbers, like who in their right mind will see those numbers and not focus on that? You know what I mean? So it has to be. I'm not trying to imply it's corruption or anything. I don't know if someone whoever's in power is getting a little bit of something on, here and there to kind of prevent that, or like you said, mention those who are bringing money if they're looked at as like a threat, us over here overseas or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not like they're giving away. It's not like the law has changed where you're not losing land or nothing. But I mean, if you were to just simply look at those numbers that you just pulled up, like who in their right mind would be like not focus on that? You know what I mean? That's why I was questioning, like, do they even know that or not? Or are they even aware to see like what was it? 220, what you said,
220 million a year.
You're like who would see those numbers in the government or whatever, because talking about small government, who would see that and be like, let's just not focus on this right now. Let's just put this to the side. You know what I mean? Like, like you said, it doesn't make sense if they knew that and are aware. Why would they not focus?
So if you were to let's just some theoreticals, right? So it's 220 million a year in remittances, and let's say what would be kind of a number of how many Tongans retire every year? 5 to 10,000 around the world.
Yeah.
Okay,
maybe
5 to 12, 5 to 10,000 rough. And let's say they've been working for 26 years like that young lady, right? That's a few $100,000 times 5,000. Let's go with the easy number. That's additional millions to tens of millions every year of investment consistently, right? Consistently. Forget about these foreign donors, man. I mean, I'm not saying, when I say I'm exaggerating a little to prove a point, meaning if you got zero foreign aid, but you got 80% of that $10 to $30 million a year from retirees, and that money not only just comes in once, but it keeps compounding and coming every year, you could do a lot. Right? You could do a lot. So, I mean, that, and then if you did that and you got foreign aid, well, even better.
Yeah.
Right? But to me, I'm just blown away by like that resource that the Kingdom of Tonga has. And I don't feel that they are leveraging that resource, but it's the number one resource that they have. But all they think about is foreign aid and World Bank and UN funds and all that stuff that they have to compete with, that they have to like stand in line. And I'm like, dude, you got tens of millions of dollars sitting right there every year.
And here's like one example. Like, for example, like Wavao had a boy that just came back. He was like, man, I ran into so many Palangi people walking around over there. They don't have nowhere to stay. There's not enough. Like, that's just one example. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, people sending money over, but if they were to build their businesses, like you already got your little tourism right there. That's extra money for the economy right there. You know what I mean? If you had made stuff easier for them to build something to bring, you know what I mean? Little stuff to look at too,
No, 100%. And here's another thing, because not only do they focus on the foreign aid, right? So let's say they're focusing on the foreign aid and they're successful with the foreign aid.
Probably still not working.
And that's the thing is, the way they apply the foreign aid and where they put the foreign aid ain't that great either. Right? Let's try. That was the same. That's a little bit better. It's a little bit bigger. But
who's this person?
So her name is Tuna. She's CEO of Tofa Ramsey. It's a local shipping company. Okay. I think she went to school at Tonga High School. Yeah, she is a Tonga High School grad. Danny's age group. She's on the board of directors for a bunch of different public enterprises and stuff. So she's a well-respected businesswoman. Okay. But let's listen to her. So this is at the same summit thing.
No, I can't hear.
At the volume.
Oh, shit. Kataki. Technical. Kofe tama IT. Ton kita tama IT.
Man, from Mohe, Konaya Mohe.
Kona fumalo he kava. Kamata ke fo tama IT.
Pongini kasi o mia ma ki mautoro me motu. Ka taki pe ai ngahi tātaimi, ko le ake ai pe ke whea, lahi ngahi taimi na ton ke tā ane afi. Ki tuku mai pe ho mau whainga maali e ka taki o e whakasisi. For our non-Tongan speakers, I'd like to thank you still for coming along, considering most of the discussions are in Tongan. And I will try to summarize the long-winded Tongan explanations that I will proceed to do right after this. Because when we speak in our language, it needs to be long for the heart to feel it. But to summarize it, it'll be done a bit shorter and to the point. Hange pe koe lawe ane nai, whamole mole, pia whatulo watu, ka mau fia ki kau whakataha i he whainga maari e koe ni, pa mau whakamalo watu, ki he polo kalama koe ni ko o mai, ma ki mau tolu. Lahi ai ngahi mea ke he kehe ia ke whai ai talanoa, ka oku mau to'o ai whainga maari e koe ni, i hono o mai ke private sector ka taki, ke o ate aho mau leo. Ne tautou o mia neafi i he tautoko ni pale nia ai uhinga, o e whakataha koe ni ke mau mea mai mei wafu me he uhala a mo e fu ki he whare whakaofo ofa koe ni me ngoe kakala o wha o ne lua. Aia koe o mai ke tala atu aho.
So I'm just going to kind of summarize it as we go, just for some of our listeners. She's a private sector business, right? So she's not in the government, and her biggest concern is she wants to have a voice for the private sector, right? So we're already getting a little bit of why the foreign aid matters, because who gets the foreign aid directly? The government. Right? The government is the first receiver of foreign aid. So does government necessarily like focusing on getting money directly to the private sector? No, because they get cut out. They aren't the ones in power and in decision making.
Mau loto, mo e mau fie mau. Ki mu a ke whakahoko ia koutu ko ki pui tu asi isi ipe. Ki he ngāue o ku mau whakahoko he nai mahino pe me ngai tālanga ane a whi o ku ke isi ipe nai ai ilo ki he mau mea o ku o malava i he kuonga koeni, ai koe kuonga eni hono whā, ai ngāue ai tō whā Ramsey Shipping ko au me he tangata hono tolu. Ko ai tō tangata hono whā ko mau ngāue mai. Me me tāne walu ngofu tupu, ai ngā ue mei tahi, ka mata mai a mehe otu motu haapai, mei lulunga. Ka koe ke pehe mau haapai pe. Tā kai whala mo lahi whamili mei wawao, iai e ko ngai niua, pak mau kore ato mau whainga maari e.
80 years, family business, domestic shipping. Yeah, I didn't even know they existed when I was in Tonga, right?
No idea.
So
you heard of that company?
What is that?
You never heard of that company?
No. But I mean, I wasn't paying attention, right? When you're young and a kid, you know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Masi.
So they take the shipping containers that came from overseas and then they distribute them within Tonga. Is that their kind of business?
Whether it's foreign goods or even domestically moving stuff around, because you remember, like a lot, probably yes, a lot of the big ships can't go to every little island, right? So maybe they take stuff and deliver it to the smaller locations, something of that sort. But basically, there's a need there that they have been meeting for 80 years. Right? And what, fourth or fifth generation? She's the third generation now leading, and maybe the fourth generation is working in the company as well.
Koe infrastructure development mo technology. Me ai mau inga au pito ki hapisi nisi pe i he sektor tau taha pe au whai e mau whainga. Ane awhina tau whanongo ai tau pehe light at the end of the tunnel. Ko hono whakatonga totonu i he mao e gifini motua koe ni, ko hapehe ko malama mai nai ha maama i he loto ana. Koe mauongo i currently, te mau full-time kia he ana.
So apparently, this is straight up, right? The government is saying there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? There's light at the end of the tunnel. And she's like, I know you guys said that, but for us, we're going to die in the tunnel. right? The one I like to use is, I see light at the end of the tunnel. The only problem is I don't know if that's sunlight or if it's a train coming back the other way. Right? And that's what she's saying is like, dude, you keep saying there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we feel like we're dying here. Right? It's like someone, when you're dying of thirst and someone says, I'm going to give you $1 million. And you're like, dude, your $1 million is worthless to me. I need water. I don't care about your $1 million is not going to keep me alive. I need the water. And that's kind of like what I'm kind of feeling from her is she's like, you guys talk about these things, but it's not helping us. Whatever you guys are doing is not helping us. Any kind of thoughts or feedback on that? Or do we want to just jump back into it? Let me know.
No, I'm good with jumping back into it.
Okay.
Lahi ai ngahi tu'utu'uni o ku hoko ia koe whakamamahi lahi. Pea ka ataki pe koe ai ne ke tau ke. Koe kore atu eni, mo whakaamua mea tau share Facebook a ke mo say yes mai a ki ngahi kore. Whatata aki pe eni. Tau toksioni pe I he foi presentation wha ofa. Kua tuku mai me he minister o mau whakamalu atu ai malini. O kukau I he division I Ministry of Infrastructure. Kau pe a tahi pe he ke teknolosia as a side note. It seems like an afterthought. Koe paanga lahi pe I he tau ngahi teu I tonga ni. Koe me aia I he e mau ki I whakasiosio ane af mo whawhanonga ngahi tala noa. O ku tau pe he ku tatawai NGO, government, donors. Me he e mau sio me tahi. O se area I ngahi project I whaka ofa laui miriona tau tānoa ki ai. Toki o angele vai ki tahi, hange ia koe na e ofo ia e whiema ue waka. Koe toki whakakau atu ki.
See, this is the kind of like disconnect. This is why government is so bad at things, right? What she's saying is you go and have this big project. Let's say you're going to get all these goods, right? You're going to get all this stuff, all this money, all this good, this huge project in Vava'u or Ha'apai, right? And you get all the material, and then you're shocked that you need a boat to get it to Ha'apai or Vava'u. And you're like, okay, buddy, you live in an island, a group of 167 islands. Why are you shocked that you need a boat to get it from point A to point B? This is not a continent. And that's what she's saying. Basically, what she's saying is there's a disconnect from the proposal, the idea from the government, and reality and how to execute it. Just like we were talking about earlier, they're all focused on the big money, the donors, and all this stuff. When they're like, dude, the Tongans overseas are your biggest source. That's what's keeping you alive today, and you're neglecting them.
I was just chuckling to her because she said say yes to the infrastructure and everything. You know the big thing's been going on in Tonga with the say yes to Loa.
Yes, say yes Ewa. Yeah.
Say yes to Ewa. And I just had a chuckle because that seems to be the trending happening in Tonga.
Everyone just say yes.
Say yes.
Yeah. I'm gonna say yes, Mike.
Yeah.
See, Tanga, if I'm going to say yes to foreign Tongan, overseas Tongans voting, let's tell swingmen, siwa, I have a rap. Yes, say yes. Vote Kamuri.
Lucky I'm not TV.
Mautolu he tala noa. O angele vaia pehe kulimitek si e sirinia ke pehe mai whemau ia ke ma'angi. Koe whanongo me he kakai o ku mamafa ai wholau ki tahi. Ko ki mautolu pe kei toe mai I he private sector, true private sector I he shipping. Ma loi whatoka ngā kai hoko ai pe. I he private shipping. Kua mate atu ho maukau ngā whanonga, he kua lahi ai ngahi mea ko ne haisia.
I think that Uliti Wata, wasn't he was the one that wasn't he like a domestic logistics shipping?
I have no idea.
I want to say Uliti Wata used to be a domestic shipping company that I may remember.
And Mate Negautaha, so his company is dead. and she's the only one left for
She's
domestic.
the only
logistics.
private sector solution for logistics right now.
Okay.
Ko ki mautolu pe, no I he panke whakakomesiare, he na e tala mai, he panke ho tau whonua, Tonga Development Bank, fulahe mau fie mau. Pea sai pe, ka pau nai pe he pe, ka kua hu mai a ngahi kautaha kehe ko community, o nau tai maarie I he tokoni interest rate, peseti pe nau tolu e ono, ngahi paanga tatau pe na mau kore. Mau peseti mau tolu hongo full point e nima, ki he panke whakomesiare. Diluted into money, that's about ono ngeau tupu, ono kilu tupu. O mau totongi, interest, I kai fair competition.
That's
Tau
crazy.
tu mai katoa hen, ko inland revenue, ko ports, ko marine, pe mention no pehe kakai maange, ai tuku pe I he marini. Mau kore ate mau tolu, pe marini, pe poate tau langa, taha pe. He ko invoice you ha'ua.
So,
See? Oh,
so
go ahead,
what did she
Mas.
say? No, I was gonna say. So she's saying that there's been other businesses coming in, and they're getting a better interest rate compared to what she's been giving with her company, and that's not a
Yes.
fair playing field.
I think what she's saying is if it comes from like, and I could be misunderstanding, if it comes from like a government-based entity, it's considered for the community or by the community, so they get a lower interest rate.
Oh, gotcha.
But because she's private sector,
she gets a higher interest rate.
she got a higher interest rate. She doesn't get a discount because she's not quote unquote a community.
Almost doubles. The interest rate almost doubles.
Yeah. And so if I understand correctly, or she's saying other industries, because there's multiple of them, they can come together and get a loan, but she can't because she's the only one left.
Yeah.
So she can't joint venture on a loan to get a lower interest rate. Something, whatever, basically because combination of not being able to have other competitors to work together, or going against like the marine, like she keeps mentioning the marine sector, like these other groups that they keep saying like, oh, it's cheaper for them. But she's like, but you're the only option. You're the government. Right? And here I am trying to survive as a private sector at a higher interest rate. And I've been doing this for 80 years. And you guys can blame us for being expensive, but I'm at a disadvantage.
Ki he kautaha e taha. Ki he whatongia o maupehe, ofa mai a pure anga. Whakahoko e whatongia he mea koe ke malawa he se ki toa tautaha. Ofa mai kautonas. Sio ko mo paanga o kui kai omi vakai pe. Vakai ua, toi asia ke pe wafo. He uke ko osi. Tatau me vakai taha ko o mai koe ave ki otumotu. Osi pe ia ki lau mahina sii e mautana ki sirini ho mauivi o kumi e vaka ke whakaakua e utaki motu. Ikai omi e tokoni ko ia ke tokoni mai ka mautolu. Koe mātu a pe mautolu. Pe a moefine mātu a tonga. Kei ngā ue. O ku whaka mamahi a e sio ki he omi o whakawhekiki I he mea o ku whai he tonga, lolo tonga I he sektoa o maui ai. Ka taki pe, ikai kia.
So once again, right? Private sector is doing the job. Instead of going and finding money to build a bridge that the private sector is not going to build, right? And do jobs that the private sector cannot do, what do? They go and buy boats to compete with the private sector when she just spent all of their investment to buy a new boat to take care of that task. The government comes in with a boat to do that. Basically, it's there to kill her. That's what it's doing, right? You're coming there to do a job that is already being done by the private sector, by the federal government, and it's going to kill her because she's got to pay back a high interest rate loan, right? And it's a small market. And the federal government's going to come in and they won't do a good job, but they're subsidized by the government, no incentive to be efficient, and it could kill her. And she has to compete with foreign aid investment. Once again, federal government not good at identifying where they need to focus. What she's saying is, dude, go build a bridge, go do something that the private sector can't do.
Yeah, those big infrastructure to
Yeah.
allow the people and commerce to go and do
Yeah.
their job. Well, that's
'Cause-
the thing. Maybe no, because I'm just thinking maybe we're getting too many people who go to school and in school they teach you how government should be the answer for everything, and then when they get there in government, all they do is just make it bigger but not make it more efficient. I don't know. That's starting because I
No,
don't know.
100%.
You can get smart people come in, but if there's smart people who believe that government needs to be just bigger and bigger and bigger but not efficient, man, right? It's hard to be efficient when you have a big government. So I don't know. I'm just trying to think out loud. Yeah.
Any thoughts there, Maka?
No, I'm just like,
It's kind of crazy.
I'm feeling bad for that lady, man.
No, I mean it is, and it is sad because I mean these people are fighting for their lives, and instead of, once again, what's the role of government? Is the role of government to compete with private sector? No, the role of government is provide infrastructure that the private sector cannot do independently, so that private sector can serve the people. Once again, you see what happens here. Maybe this is what happens. This is what it sounds like to me. I am going to go and find money, right? To go and do something that the private sector says is you can make money off of, right? So they go, oh, that's a safe bet. There's money to be made there. Let's go and flood the market. This is how businesses work in Tonga. And Masi could probably testify this, in YouTube, Maka. See it. It's the way human beings are. Once somebody starts making money in one little way, guess what everybody else in our community does? They all go do that same thing, not realizing you're going to go flood the market and you're going to kill it for everyone.
Yeah.
Right? And that's like what the government in Tonga is doing. Instead of saying, hey, thank you to Tofa Ramsey, it's difficult. They don't understand how difficult it is to run a business, right? They don't understand that. When you're the federal government, you're an educated person who never started something from the ground up. You don't understand how difficult it is. They just see Tofa Ramsey's doing it and they're not happy with the price because it's expensive, not understanding that Tofa Ramsey has to go with a higher interest rate and they have to compete. They raise their own capital. They go and say, the government's going to do that cheaper. And how we're going to do it? Get foreign aid. We're going to go get foreign aid. That's why, how many times have we seen this? New equipment gets bought by the government, brought to Tonga, runs for like maybe 2-3 years, falls apart, can't maintain, shut it down. But then in the meantime, what did they do? They killed the private sector in that area.
Yeah.
You know, where what they should be doing is what we discussed earlier, in my opinion. Free up that foreign private money to come, and maybe they will invest in her business. Maybe they'll come in and say, hey, Tofa Ramsey, I have 400K Australian dollars. I want to invest in you, and either as a loan, I can give it to you at 6%, or I get equity and we work. Maybe they come with some expertise as well. That would significantly help the domestic shipping in that area. Right? Or even if they opened up another business, but what Tofa Ramsey could do with them, if it's because she's the only one, she can't partner up with other people and make it a community loan. At least if there's another private sector competition, they can at least try and get the lower interest rate on the loans. I don't know.
Oh no, because that's another problem. That maybe that's why the government, like what you said, Dua, the government should get involved in other sector of business deals, when government should just make the field even for everybody and just let the business
Get
private
out of the
sector
way.
compete, and you just focus on your own government ministry services. That's the thing, right?
Yeah,
They're focusing on
the
jumping
wrong
on these
thing.
different sectors instead of improving your
Hey,
own service.
Yeah.
do you
Make no
remember
sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make any. And now it makes sense. I think it was last year or the year before. What did the king say to the government?
Yeah, get out of the private sector.
Get out of the private sector. This may be the kind of stuff the king is talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you're focusing on the wrong stuff. Rather than going and getting boats to kill the last remaining private sector option, maybe you need to go focus on how to make the administration easier so that foreign Tongans can invest in Tonga. Maybe you need to go focus on that.
Mm.
Right? Maybe you need to go focus on, Tongans have been complaining about the roads since I was in Tonga. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe you need to go focus on that rather than focusing on we're going to go buy some boats and do a domestic logistic company. Get out of that. Go and focus on the stuff that you should be. What's the role of government? Right? What's the role of government? What should it be doing?
Mm-hmm.
I think we know where this CEO's thoughts are, right? She's like, get the heck out of my way.
Pena me loto si ke ha ole hanga tonu ka ko ha mo lotu ai mau kau nga we pe mo e ku toke ta aku he whakarele vaka mo ngawe aki awafu whaki pe e au mo e ku kau nga we
Malotu na.
Kule anga whamole mo te whenga ke whakama opo opo hi whakataki malo fine kau pen fine he mea pe ta whata no ki ai hange pe o vale pe ko tu ko fulai aluminium de lai foi lai mea fa fo fa he funga wafu ko pe he ko ho protect fine ai wafu me mau e mau la ilami a mau to he ke holo mea ko ya ka taki ka si atu ai le
Prime example, right? The government who doesn't know how the work is executed puts in infrastructure that damages the materials and the property of the people using the infrastructure. Like she said, they came in and put some kind of metal thing structure on the wharf in theory to protect the wharf. That's what the government leadership did. What did it do? Damage the lines of the shipping boats. Because with that metal, it probably cut it, sharp edges or whatever, cut the line. See, once again, government, how me wafu. Oh, I'm going to make a mark for myself. I'm going to put some aluminum to protect the wharf. Hirigoya, it hurts the industry. It costs more money.
Eva he maulea me pure anga ke pure anga. Ki au I he whakahoko vaka. Politics is a problem.
Yep.
Discontinuity o ngawe. Fetongi tongi e kautaki. Ka koe foi misini ngau e koe pure anga. Ha upe kautaki. Hange he mawongo imwe mausio. Liriu. Whaka off.
See? Government is like a piece of machinery. It's a tool. It's a purpose. It's not the end. It's a means. It's, and it's not doing its job. It's not doing its job. Lack of continuity, right? Kind of like what Masi was mentioning earlier between people who are with the king and with the democracy and with all this, and that. No continuity leads to inefficiency.
For ofai palani. Ka oku empower na ye CEO mo kau ngawe oku nau yai ke whakahoko mai o nau whatongiaka mautolo. Oku mousio nai ko ki nau tolo ku taki he mau ngai whai. Oku nau mau ai technical mo business acumen ke nau sio mai ki he mau whenga pea mo luo mo ana ku hange oku mau nofo pe ai kai ke mau te ake hake. O se tahonga fulu me he di pite mau toi I he ni mau tolo pe kai. Infrastructure development ko hana family no fai lele tau lahi ki eua sio he fai ngata ai fetuku holo e pensini mo mea ko ia maulanga ai e pausa ko fofola ne fala ka tau talanga teki ai ke pe mata. Good job for helping us.
Did you guys notice that fofola fala ka tau talanga? right? So this is what I want to come back to. I think this is important for us to mention. She's mentioning something our ancestors have done for thousands of years. Okay? You build the mound because we were mound builders, right? You build the mound, you put the structure on top, the house or the fare or whatever. You lay the mat, you bring the kava, and then you have the discussion. That is how our ancestors executed business, executed government, executed religion for thousands and thousands of years. And she's still referencing that in saying, now that we're done talking politics, we're going back to what we did for thousands of years. This is not politics. We're laying out the fala, the mat, and we're going to talk about reality. We're going to talk about reality. We're not going to do the politics. We're not going to do the Western politics. We're going to talk about the Polynesian, the Tongan reality on how we should be behaving. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that she brought up.
Yeah. Well, and I was just thinking, for Alpha, because this is a family business, and for Alpha, just hearing from her, she doesn't know if it's gonna survive any further than 10 years because of how how everything is strained on the business on her end. So for Alpha, because 3 generations,
Yeah.
by your family.
80 years right there. Hard work.
Yeah. And to think, and she's like, the government who should be serving me, I feel is the one that's trying to kill me. Right? That's what's crazy.
And then that guy earlier, I don't know, trying to cut her off or whatever. Like, jokingly, but
go because the time, right? There's a time limit, but she's like, hey, today we're following the fala and we're going all out today. Because like she said, hey, I don't know if I'm gonna be here. So she, you have to kind of see the end of the road is a real possibility to get to this point where she's like, well, I might as well say my piece now because I may not be around. She owes it to herself. She owes it to her ancestors. She owes it to her descendants, and she owes it to the people of Tonga, right? To tell them, guys, I see a problem, and if we don't fix it, it's not going to be good for me. But if it's not good for me, it's not going to be good for the people as well.
Not good for the country.
Yeah.
Ministala mata tani aku he whanongo ho lea na whakahoko kui pausa pe tapa kui pausa e wawau te iki ai mau he whine motu ani hatohi ke tala mai o mau non-comply o ku lele ta e whakalao pe ai ngahi pausa ke I kai invest in infrastructure kai ke tau whanongo tau tauria ki ai koe technology ka taki pe kau ki hoko atu he koe talu e mau kore toko ni moe I kai o kuia e kau taha Tonga. It's called Defiant, a young Tongan entrepreneur, young people, and they're amazing me I he now develop e ek ko mau tolu pe ni ala pe ki ho mau kato ko ni ko kamata ke kai ke to iai ke ai he ko uhinga ko ave atu e kau kapiteni kau ensinia ya ave a otori ka mau feinga reva teknolosia ke toko ni mai ke mau ngawe.
One thing, so basically what she's saying is there are some local app developers that she's investing in directly, right? And this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. These Tongans overseas with their retirement funds would be doing this type of investment, right? And because there's no capital within Tonga to invest in these, that's why we're losing the good labor to go and pick fruits overseas. Because there's no capital in Tonga to take advantage of the skill sets she's mentioning. Guys who are learning how to be maritime captains, people who have software development skills. Why are they going to go pick the fruit? Because there's no capital in Tonga to invest in them to make some commerce out of the skills they have. They have to forget those skills that they learned and go do physical labor because that makes more money than staying in Tonga, despite the knowledge that they have.
What did she say about our fafafonga from our district that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he told her that told the Tonga that only one gas station in Mava'u was compliant, but it was the other gas stations in Tonga are non-compliant because of neglect of infrastructure by the government. And
Yeah. She's saying two things. Number one, never communicated to them that they were non-compliant.
Mm.
Right. And then it sounds like she's saying, so number one, you never told us we're not compliant.
Mm.
Right. So that's a problem. If you don't communicate to me that I'm doing something wrong, how am I supposed to fix it? And we all know how Tonga is. Nobody pays attention. Only until there's an issue, then all of a sudden people pay attention. Then the second part, like you're saying, is maybe they're non-compliant because there's not the correct infrastructure in place. How can you blame me, the private sector, for not being compliant for something that the federal government should be providing? Right? So you're setting them up for failure is basically what she's saying. So number one, you don't communicate. Number two, you aren't even providing the proper tools because they're too busy buying boats to compete with the private sector in an area that they don't need to get involved in. And then, like you said, then all of a sudden they think they're on their high horse. Oh, I did my job. I found you non-compliant. That's a problem. You know whose fault is it that only one gas station was compliant?
In Mava'u, yeah.
That's the government's fault. See how it is? Like it would be like this. You have a teacher, says they're the best teacher in the world. They know all the stuff. They have 30 students, only one student passes. The person who has the wrong perspective would say, what terrible students. One would have to ask themselves, no, who is the expert? Who has the knowledge? Who's the responsible party? It's the teacher. You have to look at the teacher and say, hey, what's going on here? Why is only one out of your 30 students passing? Then hey, I'm not saying it's always the teacher, but that's where you have to start. That's where the responsibility starts, especially when you're paying the teacher, right? When each student's paying the teacher, you're taxing the people, you're receiving foreign aid on their behalf, and you're telling me every pausa in Tonga was non-compliant. Well, how long have you known that?
Yeah.
Because if you're telling me you've known for years, then you haven't been able to fix it. When I think the gut feeling is you haven't been doing your job, then out of the blue, you do some random survey, which catches everybody off guard and they're not compliant.
Yeah.
See, but what's presented is private sector bad guy, government good guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not usually the case, man.
Imagina tami heni e lonche epkoya ko ilo e toki alwange statistika ko le ekuteita e alwange pote taulanga e fia kerela mo marini he e tonu e hingoa atu heka hevaka te eki peke taulava tautol o sia te ashika ke faka mamafa ai ngahi me akoia ko me ape mau toki mamata mai ai ki he pule anga ko e fine ko e talangi ho mau to no hala hataini ke oange ko e haha mea ke tau fua fatongia whakataha.
So it sounds like that Defiant app is probably a passenger tracking and cargo tracking tool, right? For these domestic logistics. So it
where
can
they're
track
going to,
where they're going to and what they're doing. So see, that's what she's saying. We're the ones investing in this. And then who's going to be the first one standing in line going like this? Remember that, Masi, when we were little kids? You know, someone has
no, me was like this, like, oh my,
you were two heads, Masi?
2 heads. Kaya nutoro.
Yeah, right? But you see, why is it that the federal, I keep saying federal, why is the government of Tonga running to the private sector like this? Because that's what they're used to. Foreign aid, big money developers like this. You know, if they were focusing on the Tongans, they're not going like this. That hand would be helping. It would be grabbing. it would be putting something forward, not going like this.
This Tongan lady's also brought up that the government is very good at telling them their faults and weaknesses instead of
Yeah,
enabling them to try
Yeah.
to help them
and trying to
be
help
more
out.
efficient. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's typical for government to kind of do that. Always tell other people's faults instead of the inward looking. It's a lot
Yeah.
of government is like that.
Well, see, and that's the funny thing is what government, especially, and I noticed this Tonga, the people who work in the government in Tonga have no idea about this, in my opinion, right?
Mm.
And I didn't really know about this until I spent more time in the US. In Tonga, the perspective is that the government produces money and goods.
Yeah,
Because what's one of the biggest employers in all of Tonga?
it's the government.
Is the government. So people think the government is a producer. They don't know that the government is 100% consumer. The
Yeah.
government doesn't produce any money.
Yeah.
The only money that the government gets is from taxing the people and foreign aid.
Mm.
But what is the perspective of the average Tongan when I was growing up? Oh, the government makes the money. The government provides these things.
Mm.
Eh? So when the government comes out and says private sector bad, that's an easy story to tell.
Mm.
Eh?
Mm.
The populace will eat that up. So like
Yeah.
when this Lanumata guy looks like
That's
he
our
was
Fawafonga. That's our
yeah,
Fawafonga.
that's from La
Be nice
Paja.
to him.
Yeah.
Be nice to him.
If I was voting, I wouldn't be voting for him. Right?
More 5 million went come away now.
Actually, it is. Actually, we are.
We
are. Wow.
This is it. We are.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny.
Can't pick our family, you know, but
Hey, yeah. Hey, you know. So it sounds like he showed up there the day before, right? Look at the bad private sector. They're all incompliant. Look at how bad. Look at how good I am. I found them. Where any type of leader would say, with such a high failure rate, and we are the regulator, who is responsible for that poor performance? That would be like me as a coach. Never have a practice, never do anything, send my team out into the field and they don't win and be like, yeah, my team sucks. They're terrible. Right? A good leader would say, man, what did we do wrong? How did we mess up our preparation to be beat by 100? I'm okay losing by 5-7 points, okay. But lose by 100 points? That's not acceptable. But instead of thinking like that, my representative in Tonga goes up there and pats himself on the back and say, look at me. I found out that they were all incompliant except for one. And I said, Tiana, is there a pausa in La Paja? Walk to it. Go check it yourself every day and make sure at least La Paja's pausa passes.
Yeah. No, and this is another thing. I'm just thinking like lot of the Tongan, because the Tongan government gives their scholarships to Australia, New Zealand. Some go to China. Some I actually know one person that went to Cuba to do their studies. All these places,
communists.
Yeah, well, they have a I guess it's cheap to teach doctors there to get trained and stuff. And probably doesn't help because you are right, Tua. Growing up in Tonga, you have that mindset of the government being the all and end all kind of thing, right? And that let's just say government becomes such a good thing that it should do everything for you, because even when you go to New Zealand and Australia, that is the mindset, a majority, right? And then they get educated there, so they just come back and just reaffirm what they believe.
Reinforce that idea.
Reinforce that idea. Cuba, some go to China. I don't know about the Japan system. I know some people get scholarship go to Japan, but China government does everything. Cuba the government does everything for you. New Zealand, I mean, there's the private sector, but New Zealand's a very friendly government, should be doing everything. Australia too. So I'm like, I don't know if maybe we need to diversify a little bit. Like I'm just saying, because we're having the academic side of people going to school. It's no question it's there, but it's just what side you're advocating for. And most of the people who are in government are always advocating for government to get bigger and should be doing everything and be involved in all aspects. That's just me thinking out loud. And I know, Lanmata did his like master's in commerce, but with a Chinese institution. So I'm like, so that's what I'm just saying. Like, that's what I'm just thinking. It's like, man, like, what's the point of getting all these education if you're just believing something that hasn't been working for multiple government leaders before? I don't know. I'm just like thinking out loud, man, on that.
Any thoughts, Maka?
No, he mentioned Cuba. I'm over here looking. I'm like, man, do you need a visa? I got distracted. I'm like, to visit Cuba.
yeah. Apparently, some people got some it's like a student seat to go study medical study and become a doctor in Cuba and come back to Tonga.
Yeah, I just seen that for a Tongan citizen, you just need a tourist card or something like that. But I don't know. I don't even know what that is. But
yeah, we'll see.
My bad.
And then that's one of the things that I think, is a big challenge for that is, and I didn't think about that, Mussy, that a lot of our government and our leaders in government and even in the quote unquote private enterprise, they're going to places that reinforce big government.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, what they believe as a kid that the government should be involved
in
everything.
And this comes back to our overall theme. What is the role of government? Right? What is its role? What is the role of your kalapu? Do you want your kalapu to tell you how to spend your day and your money and blah, blah, blah? No, you say your kalapu is just to give me a good time when I go drink some kava, right? Maybe I just want a clean place. I want some rules. I don't want anybody coming kona, kobe with kava malo. Like little things like that. Same thing with government. I just want you to build me some roads.
Just kini bao etafaki. That's all. Keep maintain the road.
Don't come and try to tell me how to pray and all that stuff. Like you said, I'll be kini te givao, and you say thank you, malo fokiaki. But I think what was funny. This is what I was gonna say. You remember that 88.6 guy who summarized earlier when they had wasn't like a government shutdown, but the vote of no confidence.
Yeah.
To kind of prove how bad it is, right? Must like what you're saying. When they had the vote of no confidence, Maka, they were having like a live show or something. This is literally one of the questions that came through. What am I going to do? The government is having a vote of no confidence. So the government, in a sense, was like frozen, and they voted they were going to vote the PM out. And literally the people in Tonga were saying, how does this going to affect me? Shanna, the PM don't come in huo yung for you. He don't come drive your bus for you. He doesn't, but that's the kind of mentality. I guess is, oh Yahweh, the Tongan government is not going to be open tomorrow. What's going to happen to me? It's like, no, nothing's going to happen to you. Oh, the Lord said he's not going to be in charge. He's not going to run the world tomorrow. What's going to happen to me? It's like, it's the government, man. They could go out of business and you'd be good at least for a year. You might even make a little progress before things get worse. So let's come back and finish off our sister's commentary here.
Ko politiki mau kore atu. O ku whiri ki mau tolu he kakai. Pa ko si i peho mau ai hala mau tolu mo ha. Whiri u mau tolu ia. Ko ha solo va anga ko uhinga yo tau heni ai ko kore tokoni. Ka taki pe fine ka te hoka pe heluru tai ke ki samarino no pe ke foi konga po ini that I need the donors to hear me. Just a short one. With all of that, that was basically asking our people to come together. For 80 years, our family has been trying to do this business, and it doesn't seem to reach where it needs to reach. Donor funds are being used to buy and bring stuff to our country that we are already doing with commercial banks at high interest rates. Please, if there is a private sector company doing what is already being done, support them. Do not bring in votes that we already have. And we hear the comments yesterday. Oh, in the outer islands. There's no boats. My boats can go everywhere. We have got service boats to link the main ship to the smaller ships because we care. We are from the islands. Our boats are shaped as they are for ease of transfer. We would love a high, beautiful boat, which is thank you, Japan, for the gift of the boat. But I wish it was for me. I wish it was for the private sector. We continue to maintain, even though there is high cost, there is high fees. And thank you for the beautiful domestic party house, because that's what's happening. It is an event center used by government while we are in the rain, the sun, and the dust with the people from the islands.
Is she talking about the domestic wharf in Colo? The Queen Salote wharf or something? Or,
is that what she's talking about? I don't know.
I think so. Because I know the government has held events there. I know the Cruz Tutukuria Honda had their reunion there. And that's why I was like, oh, she's probably referred to that one.
Probably
that's supposed to be a wharf. Yeah, it's probably the wharf supposed to be used for
waste of money.
Yeah.
And they're treating it like it's like an event center.
Yeah. Like
you know, and I guarantee you, maybe the people who put that together, they're like, man, or something. Who knows? Rather than thinking, you know what? Why don't we go ask the CEO of Tofao Ramsey Company if this makes sense? Right? What's a better way to use the money that was going to be spent on that? Oh, you know what you should do before you go put an aluminum piece of metal that'll cut the ropes of the ships? Why don't you go talk to the CEO of Tofao Ramsey Company and say, that's basically what she's saying is, hey, donors, I appreciate you guys willing to help, but you're actually making things worse because you're not talking to the right people and you're not investing in the right areas.
I know that. You know that. Why is it still happening? I have seen most of you there, and we are outside there trying to work quietly in our forklifts, trying to not use microphones, even though I know my voice carries. All I'm asking is, please, for the shipping industry, we are the only remaining, and I'm sure in other private sectors, this is happening. We heard about machinery just being run down.
Look at that face. That guy's face is saying, I learned something today, in my opinion. Looks kind of serious, kind of like, man, we need to ask a few more questions before we just write a check or, you know, provide a piece of machinery.
They look like the Japanese. Yeah. They look like the Japanese that have been donating a lot to Tonga.
Because it's not going to the machinery. My fellow panel.
I hope he was looking at Lanmata. Lanmata, why the hell are we failing all the gas stations for? Huh? Why are you all? Maria La Paja Nights.
Is here the Puloka construction? Only them and private sector companies now run by young people ever consult us in projects to the outer islands. And we give them the true cost to reflect the interest rates that we pay that our competitors do not pay because they are community owned. Their risk is shared. Why not support us that are here, that has been showing the resilience time and time again? And here we are still asking. There is a lot more to be said. And we have set up more, including all our family now working there so that I could have more time for meetings. I have knocked on most doors to be told to wait. Some ministers, I'm still waiting 3 weeks to have a meeting. Please consult us. We were never consulted on the building of the wharf at the domestic wharf. But God's grace and mercy, and time and time again, he has brought us through. Only our vessels was able to come into that wharf that we were not consulted on. The boats it was made for, it didn't fit. They had to do extra.
Government's not good at it. The boats that they made it for can't even fit at the domestic wharf.
That's a shame,
man.
Extra work. God has proven time and time again, and we continue to work. But please, we are questioning the why. Why do we do things we should be doing together alone? Please help us, Malo.
Look at that. Everybody loved that. Look at that face right there.
Those
Man,
are, I think, those are the Australian and New Zealand. I think.
Yeah, like
I know some
the
tears in those
donors
eyes.
there.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess malo for the government for putting together the summit. They did something right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's good. Yep.
Even though I would probably say they thought the summit was for them to pat themselves on the back in front of the donors to say, look at all the good things we're doing. Give us more money. Right. But then the reality smacked them in the face, in my opinion. But
Here come the whistleblower right here. Let everybody know.
oh yeah. Well, with that being said, Masi, any closing thoughts? Then Maka, and then we will call it a night.
No, enjoyed the conversations, Tua and Maka. It's always a pleasure of mine to join you both and just sharing our thoughts. And hopefully, it was helpful and to the viewers, and hopefully the viewers were able to share their thoughts with some of their thoughts on what we talked about today. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. Malo, Maka, and Tua. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week and stay safe with yourself and your families. Malo, bye.
Malo.
Yep. Yeah, I just want to thank Thua Masi for having me. I'm just I'm just happy to just tag along and learn some things and share my little 2 cents. But yeah, I learned a little bit about myself. I need to touch up on my government and politics, you know what I mean? But yeah, just glad to be along and be part of this podcast. Being a fan myself, I'm not one of I've been seeing some of your guests on here. I'm like, man, these are some heavy hitters over here. I'm just I'm just an enthusiast and history, tongue and history buff, you know what I mean? So but always grateful for your guys' knowledge and just being open-minded to everything and just having this platform to allow people like me and everyone else who's already been on here and whoever's going to be on here in the future to just come and share a little bit of their thoughts. But yeah, thank you for having me and appreciate you guys.
100%. Malo Masi, Malo Maka for your time. Really appreciate it. We're big believers that conversations is where it all starts, right? Like if you don't have conversations, war is coming. We don't want war, right? We want to have conversations. This is what our ancestors have been doing for thousands of years. This is how our ancestors, established a culture, established a civilization. And I'm excited to continue that tradition, right? Not only within my own personal family, with my wife and my kids, to have conversations. That's what family home evening is. That's what family councils are, is having conversations. Really appreciate everyone who supported us along the way. Just a couple quick highlights. We hit 1 year this week.
Yeah.
Been 12 months now that our little Fakamuna has been running around. So 1 year where, we celebrate the little things. Some people might laugh at us and be like, oh man, but for us, it's exciting. We broke 700 subscribers on YouTube. We broke 2,000 followers on TikTok. Little things here and there. We've really enjoyed the ride, and like our ancestors did when they went on the canoes. They went. We don't know if we'll make it, but we have the faith, right? We still went out there just because it wasn't guaranteed they would get to the island that was 1,000 miles away. But they had the faith and they jumped on the ship and they went out there. So with that being said, looks like T-Style says on Maka's handles. Is that like Rockstone or what's your social media online, Maka?
Yeah, so I'm I didn't know I had fans out there, but no, Rockstone, that's my little Fakava name, little Kalapo over here. But yeah, Mr. Obo, he Fapalange Moki Koloi. It's just our little Kolo and Tonga, but Instagram, Mr. MISTA_OBOAT, Mr. Obo. And then Facebook, I'm just Maka, Tuihala Maka. Yeah, so
there we go, T-Style.
Yeah, Malo T-Styles.
Yeah,
Malo for tuning in. Everybody else who tuned in, all your comments, appreciate it.
Yes, I appreciate it. There were a lot of comments on online. I didn't get to all of them. I appreciate it. Appreciate the interaction as always. Be bold, ask the hard questions, and till next time, peace.
Peace.
Malo.